The unusual story began at the slaughterhouse, where GG worked as a butcher. While butchering pigs, he realized that the genes that determine the structure and shape of a pig's tissues and organs of pigs are 95% similar to those of humans. The dissection of human bodies had long been forbidden, so pigs were used as substitutes. While he was busy butchering the pig with his bloody knife, the manager suddenly appeared, calling desperately for Mara. Stepping into a puddle of fresh blood on the floor, huge Junho said that it didn't matter how successful a man was. After all, he had been living like a pig for most of his life. Macho was thrilled with Maru, who outclassed even guys who had been wielding knives for 4 or 5 years. Junho was worried that Maru was vying for his place as manager, and in a rage raised his steel axe, intending to attack Maru. Though puzzled, Maru looked trustingly into Junho's eyes even as death swiftly loomed over him. Junho brought his axe down sharply, but did not strike Maru. Instead, he struck the pig carcass hanging behind the stunned lad. Then, showing off his axe and bragging about his huge, muscular body, Junho declared that Maru was still a long way from his record. Maru was only worried that the boss would chop the workbench again and advised the manager to get dressed. But Junho was busy admiring the neatly carved meat steak created by his skillful hands and was thinking of displaying it in a museum. Completely absorbed in his work, Hamaru assured him it was the best. He skillfully cut the pork skin, exposing the fresh pink meat. Junho ruffled the boy's hair in amazement. It seemed only a year had passed and Maru already wielded the knife like a professional. However, an annoyed Maru said that if he wasn't helping, then let him not interfere with his work unnecessarily. Junho shouted to Kim Yang, the accountant, to tell someone that Maru had a lot of work piled up that day. So Maru had to go to the field work with an escort. However, Kim Yang was busy. She was stuffing her mouth with food, so she couldn't answer right away. When Junho yelled at the top of his voice, Kim Yang had to turn around with a bunch of noodles and a shrimp sticking out of her stuffed mouth. He sternly ordered her to stop the mukbang and keep an eye on the office while he left on business. Then, to Maru's annoyance, Junho piled his carcass on his frail shoulder, eager to show how much he cared for him. Maru knew Junho's true affection: the paltry pay, the no days off, the overtime, the pestering even after work. Junho stuck out his lips with a lustful expression, wanting Maru to know of his immense love for him. Junho reminded Maru of his first day of work when a cute little piglet with a baby smile was placed in front of him. Junho had brought it in to test Maru's skills in the slaughterhouse and promised that if he killed it, he would get paid. Most people would have hesitated to kill an innocent animal with a cheerful smile. But Maru was different. He decapitated this adorable piglet in the blink of an eye. From that day on, Junho immediately realized that Maru was a born butcher. Meanwhile, Junho skillfully dragged the irritated Maru to help him wash during working hours. When the dumbass sat down on a stool, showing off his bulging body and firm buns, poor Maru had to rub his back. Junho talked about the power with which GH beat up all his classmates and insisted that he use that power to wash him. But he would not pay him, and when Maru objected, Junho remarked that Maru needed a lot of money. When Maru confirmed, Junho blurted out that he had a lucrative job for him this time, and if he took it, Maru could not only renovate the house, but escape poverty. Maru was puzzled, so Junho asked him if he had studied in Japan. When Maru confirmed, Junho flashed his huge teeth in a hideous smile, letting Maru know to get ready for his new job. In the blink of an eye, an airplane flew through the Japanese sky, over a deserted bus stop, where a confused Maru stood waiting for his escort. However, the poor man was covered in cold sweat when he saw his place of employment. He even shouted into the sky. And then there was the Japanese livestock company, with whom they traded meat, who requested an urgent shipment, and that's why Maru was sent there. Maru was furiously butchering a dead pig, roughly stabbing the knife, as he had not been given a single day off in those 6 months. He calculated that if he had worked like this in Korea, he would have made the same money, and questioned his own sanity since he had gotten here. Not only that, the workplace was strange, for even though they claimed to be short on supplies, Maru was the only butcher there. Besides, some Japanese gangster had been watching him closely for the past 6 months, smoking like a steam engine, which pissed Maru off. Pulling on a smile, Maru exclaimed in Japanese to the Yakuza that smoking was not allowed in this place, adding an insult in Korean at the end. Grinning cheerfully, the Yakuza complied. But the strangest part was this, that they only had to separate and clean up the ribs, and all the other parts were thrown away. When he held one of those ribs, it seemed strangely heavier than usual. It seemed as if they weren't hollow but filled with something. He could make out a thin line on the rib, as if it had been put back together after being filled. There was also some strange white powder seeping out of that seam. It was a job that no Japanese butcher would have handled, as a novice could easily break the ribs while cutting the meat for this reason. This company did not care about hygiene during the deboning process, and some ribs were clearly cut and glued back together. Suddenly, Maru realized that the Yakuza was looking at him suspiciously as Maru stopped working and scrutinized the rib. When the Yakuza, staring intently at Maru, made an ominous sound, the guy decided to leave immediately. Soon he was already on the phone with Junho, who was yelling at him for already wanting to go back. Maru snapped at Junho about what he had already endured: months of overtime, night shifts, and surveillance by the Yakuza. The man angrily stated that it was all normal. Junho explained to Maru that it was all no joke. Maru had a bad feeling about the place, one that hadn't arisen suddenly but had grown over time. Junho was annoyed that Maru was trying to backdoor the place. After all, he had given Maru the opportunity so he could get through and pay for his brother's tuition and his mother's loan. When Maru insisted, Junho convinced him to stay in Japan for another month, and he would have everything sorted out by then. The unhappy Maru had no choice but to comply. Sighing heavily at the lengths he had to go to for money, he hung up the phone with force. All for the sake of his family, for the sake of helping his loved ones. The next moment, Maru was already back in that hellhole, furiously butchering the carcass. He was maniacally chopping the carcass, gritting his teeth viciously, thinking that if it wasn't for the money, he would have left this place long ago. He was completely immersed in his thoughts when he was called out by a Yakuza. Sticking out his pierced split tongue, the Yakuza cheerfully stuck his hand down his underpants. Then with the same hand he pinched his cheek affectionately, thanking him for his hard work, because without Maru they would have gotten into serious trouble. Meanwhile, Maru was seething with anger. The Yakuza pulled Maru by both cheeks so hard that his teeth were bared and his eyes almost popped out of his orbits. Maru was tempted to stab this Yakuza to death, but then he noticed his gun and decided to let the thought go. Rubbing his sore cheeks, an annoyed Maru wondered if the Yakuza had come here to praise him. However, the Yakuza explained that he would be leaving work early because it was his girlfriend's birthday. But he would be replaced by the youngest member of the company. Just in time, this cute and cuddly member of the company arrived. And to Maru's horror, this kitten turned out to be a huge type like a sumo wrestler all tattooed. Maru nearly had a heart attack when he found out that this giant was his age. Soon, the Yakuza introduced Maru as a butcher and ordered his replacement to carefully remove the cleaned ribs. But the giant was very dumb and idiotically asked his boss exactly where over there. Enraged to the core, the Yakuza told the giant to put the ribs wherever he wanted. Suddenly, the ground began to gradually shake, followed by the furious clanking of meat hooks. Mara was gripped by panic, as the whole earth began to rumble and roar with great force. Feeling that a massive earthquake had begun, the Yakuza desperately ordered the giant not to drop those precious ribs. Unfortunately, the giant panicked and ran away, tripped, and flew forward, sending the ribs flying through the air. As the ribs fell to the ground one by one of them broke in half and a shimmering white powder emerged from the hollow rib. Maru clamped his hand over his mouth in horror when he saw this infamous white substance. Yakuza grinned, seeing Maru's apprehension, and assumed it was the guy's first time seeing an earthquake. Yakuza desperately tried to cover up the deception by saying that the suspicious white powder was bone meal. Maru had already smelled something amiss, but decided to ignore it for now. When he got back to work, the Yakuza cursed angrily at the giant and told him to clean up the mess he had made. Still curious, the giant wrinkled his face, clarifying if Maru was from Korea. When the Yakuza confirmed, the dim-witted man casually blabbed that the bone meal was actually a gimmick, assuming Maru didn't know Japanese. Meanwhile, Maru pretended to ignore the conversation, but he turned his head slightly, sweat rolling down his pale cheeks. The Yakuza knew that Maru spoke Japanese even though he was Korean. Maru smelled something wrong and turned around in panic. To his horror, the disgusting Yakuza was holding a gun, intending to kill him. Still, he felt sorry for what had happened. Maru froze wide-eyed in front of the sinister gangster, wondering if his life would end like this. Looking at the ominous muzzle, he remembered how hard he worked, butchering pigs every day, struggling to make a living and feed his family. He felt sorry for himself, for after so much labor he was about to die senselessly. when the muzzle touched his trembling forehead, and the Yakuza's finger was firmly on the trigger. Maru realized that he didn't want to die in this wretched place. Suddenly, Junho's words about being a born butcher echoed in his mind as he didn't hesitate to slaughter a cute little piglet on his first day. Some newcomers couldn't pass this task, or after killing their first animal, people get overwhelmed. But Maru instead questioned how it was possible to kill an entire pig in one blow. Junho understood Maru's perfectionism and efficiency were more important than fear, and that surprised and pleased him. It pointed him to a spot that would be easy to kill, whether it was a pig or a man. And now, before the fatal trigger was pulled, Maru swiftly severed the Yakuza's hand that held the gun. The sounds of agonizing pain along with the sickening splash of blood merged together, as Maru finally recognized himself as the butcher. The Yakuza cursed at Maru, hysterically trying to cover the fountain of blood squirting from his severed arm. Maru remembered that so far he had slaughtered countless pigs that looked 95% like humans. For that reason, Maru knew what he was doing. He knew exactly where to cut a man, and where to strike to kill. As Maru swung and stabbed the Yakuza over and over again, he reflected that up to this point he had dealt with a few pigs. As warm scarlet blood rushed from the Yakuza's neck, Maru forgot the difference between a man and a pig. As the Yakuza fell dead to the ground, Maru slowly realized the reality that he had indeed killed a man. Immediately, heavy footsteps came toward him, causing Maru to turn around in alarm. It was none other than the disgusting thug who had berated him in Japanese. The bulky man pounced on Maru like a hungry beast, knocking him to the ground. He crushed Maru with such force that the carcasses hanging from above shook violently and splintered to pieces. In a rage, the bulky man punched Maru in the face, completely stunning him. He punched Maru in the face over and over again for killing his good-hearted brother, who was about to propose to his girlfriend that day. Poor Maru was badly beaten. Blood was gushing from his nose. Nevertheless, the bulky man desperately wanted to kill him, and brought his huge, stone-like fist to finish Maru off. Maru realized that he was seriously in trouble, and it would be very difficult for him to get out of this dangerous situation. Maru didn't give up and plunged his dagger into the bulky man's huge belly. But to his horror, the dagger didn't do much damage to the terrifying giant, for the giant was used to being hit with such toothpicks. He continued to hammer Mara in the face. Finally, the giant's huge hands reached out and grabbed Mara by her frail neck and began to strangle him, intending to tear out his throat. Poor Maru was already honoring his death, his pupils rolled up. Suddenly, Junho's voice sounded in his mind, drawing his attention to the innards of the butchered pig. Pigs usually have strong bones and thick fat, so if you're not careful, you can dull your knife. The only way for a butcher to cut around the bones is to cut through the fat. To do this, Maru had to memorize the best way. Almost instinctively, Maru visualized the bulky man's body as a huge pig carcass. Maru fumbled with its huge rib cage and slid the knife underneath it to find the right path. Maru plunged the dagger into the exact spot on the giant's belly, and then swung it with great force, creating a swirl of fat. When the heavy grip on Maru's throat tightened even more, he let out a piercing scream, and then swung the dagger with tremendous force across the bully's belly. Suddenly, a huge wave of scarlet blood splattered Maru's face, and Junho's words about being a born butcher echoed in his mind. The thug lay lifelessly on top of a flattened Maru in a pool of blood. Almost crushed, Maru pushed the bulky body away, which took a tremendous effort on his part. Looking at the dead bodies, Maru clutched his swollen mouth in horror, as they reminded him of countless pig carcasses. But then he assured himself that he had killed those thugs in self-defense, and if he hadn't killed them, he himself would have been mercilessly finished off. He wondered if the police would believe him if he turned himself in, and maybe whatever he said would carry no weight and seem like an excuse. Then another chilling thought struck him. What if the other Yakuza tracked him down? Maru firmly decided that there was only one way out of this whole mess: set the whole place on fire with all the evidence against him. His thoughts were rudely interrupted by a third extra who suddenly burst into the slaughterhouse, cursing Maru angrily. Maru hadn't expected a third bully. However, this type started firing indiscriminately at Maru. In panic, Maru covered his ears and tried to dodge the bullets by running back and forth. This rascal was adamant in his intention not to let Maru escape. He was going to catch up and kill him. Maru reached a large freezing chamber, which the bandit thought was a dead end. Firing furiously, the bully cursed at Maru in Japanese and finally entered the freezer. Finally, the shooting stopped. The man looked around, but Maru had somehow vanished into thin air. The villain began shouting insults, beckoning Maru to come out of his hiding place, and then he would kill him quickly. Suddenly, the bully felt something and saw a shoe sticking out from behind the crates. The scoundrel sarcastically shouted at Maru for disguising himself so well, and it seemed the scoundrel had found the GG and shot him. But to his disappointment, the shoe was lying separately, with no sign that Maru was wearing it. As if out of the blue, Maru loudly announced his presence, hanging with a number of carcasses from an iron beam above. With all his might, he pushed all the carcasses towards the bandit, and soon they all came off their hooks and began to fall, and all of them came crashing down on the stunned thug, knocking him to the ground. Even in his stunned state, the bully didn't forget to curse Mara. Without wasting a second, Maru took a huge leap to quickly stab the thug with the knife. The thug couldn't believe the unbelievable situation he was in. But before he could react, Maru had already plunged the dagger into a certain point on his chest. Maru gritted his teeth in anger, driving the dagger deeper into the bandit's chest. Finally, the insult stopped. Even in agony, the bandit smirked at Maru, calling him an idiot, for he should have punched him in the neck. With an ugly cackle, the bandit raised his rifle arm, muttered an insult in Japanese to Maru, and tried to pull the trigger. To his alarm, his fingers were paralyzed and he couldn't pull the trigger. Maru remembered Junho pointing to a butchered pig, showing how the brachial plexus connects the spinal cord to the limbs. Not only that, Junho had also pointed out the specific location of the brachial plexus in humans, which was exactly the same as in pigs. Maru could remember Junho triumphantly holding up a butchered pig, trying to prove his point that pigs and humans are 95% the same. Junho had warned Maru that there would come a time when even he would confuse animals and humans. At this point, the vigilant Maru maniacally drew his dagger, and despite the bandit's desperate pleas, not a muscle in his face wavered, and GH drowned the villain in the red slurry. The next thing Maru did was board a 6-hour flight back to Korea. When the plane finally landed in his homeland, and as Mr. Maru walked up the grand staircase, he let out a weary sigh after only 6 months of hard labor. He literally wanted to get the hell out of the damn neighborhood. All the street cats were afraid of the butcher and scattered at his appearance. However, Maru was glad that the Yakuza were not following him. Maru had taken the precaution of setting the place on fire, destroying all traces of dirt, so he was sure he would be hard to track down. Relieved, Maru entered his house, but was surprised to find the lights on even at dawn. Turning the doorknob, he wondered if everyone was still awake. Entering the house with a broad smile, he cheerfully called out to his mother, breaking the news that he had made a lot of money this time and had even brought gifts from Japan. The astonished Maru was greeted by a trashed house, where everything was broken or scattered on the floor. He wondered who could have wreaked such havoc in his house. Maybe robbers. Where are the relatives? He called desperately for his mom and his brother Naru, and then he noticed something that sent shivers down his spine. On the floor lay a pork rib, broken in half, with traces of a mysterious white powder oozing out of it. Maru's face darkened with fear as he realized it was the same infamous bone marrow. But he didn't realize how it had gotten into his house. Suddenly, the stranger called out to him, telling him that fortunately he had returned. The stunned Maru turned around and saw many huge men looking at him with stony expressions on their faces. A wave of terror pierced his heart. Had the Yakuza tracked him all the way home? The man with glasses confirmed his identity, while Maru wondered if his mother and brother were part of this horrible gang. The man stated that he was looking for someone, and Maru made it easy for him. With these words, he slipped his hand into his coat, giving Maru the impression that a gun was about to come out. Maru was pretty sure that the Yakuza were following him all the way to Kora. Maru was ready for another massacre. But to his great amazement, a man with glasses pulled out an ID card, indicating that he was in fact a member of the Narcotics Crimes Unit. His name was Detective Han Taeseok. Detective Han asked Maru to follow him. Maru was a little alarmed when he saw Detective Han from the Narcotics Division. He expected to be followed by those Japanese gangsters, but instead the police were looking for him, probably for the murders and subsequent arson. Han decided to give him the details later, since he needed Maru's cooperation first. Maru, trying to hide his fear, wondered if it was ethical for the police to break into his house like this, without any evidence against him. Before Han could answer, the young officer hysterically tried to clear up the misunderstanding in Maru's mind. He clarified that they were not the ones who had caused the commotion around Maru's house. However, the house was in chaos because his mother was out of control. Maru was completely shocked when Han informed him that his mother was involved in drug trafficking. Maru recalled that his mother was somewhat careless as she loved shopping. Even when their family went bankrupt, she still spent money like an obsessive. Nevertheless, Maru loved the carefree smile on his infantile mother's face, and couldn't imagine her in her exhausted and desperate state, begging for another dose. Khan revealed that his mother was going through the shock symptom of a drug overdose. Maru watched helplessly, as the nurses anxiously tried to rescue and restrain his mother. A shocked Maru learned that the police had found his mother in this pitiful condition. Maru's eyes went wide when the police showed him the source of the problem in the evidence bag, a white powder in a pork rib. The detective was curious when exactly Maru's mother had gotten hooked on it. Khan was somewhat skeptical when Maru claimed ignorance on the matter. He gave Maru a hard look, and then gave him his phone number so that if anything came to Maru's mind, he could notify him immediately. Detective Han and his partner left, leaving the unfortunate Maru at the hospital. Sitting in the car, Khan was still deep in thought, constantly smoking cigarettes to the annoyance of his partner. The whole car was filled with noxious tobacco smoke, and the poor officer partner coughed and coughed. Khan was annoyed, however, because all this drama by his partner had broken his concentration. The gasping son decided to open the car window to ventilate the poisonous fumes. Khan clarified that the underground parking lot was a non-smoking area. Still flaring his nostrils, the purple-haired son suggested that Han could smoke outside the parking lot, rather than making a hotbox in the car. But there was no use arguing with Han. He extinguished the cigarette butt on the already overflowing paper cup. Han continued to puzzle over Maru. He asked his partner to see what they had on the kid. In another scene, a worried Maru stood by his mother's bedside, staring intently at her while she slept peacefully. Maru was still in shock, as it had only been 6 hours since he had returned home and destroyed all traces of his identity at that facility. Without the information, there was no way the Yakuza could have acted faster than him. Maru couldn't figure out who could have slipped his mom the powder. Suddenly, he received a phone call from manager Hong. Chun-ho expressed his concern upon hearing about the sudden fire in the Japanese establishment. Maru wasn't in the mood to chat with Chun-ho, so he quickly wanted to end the conversation, citing that he had things to do. Chun-ho was curious about Maru's business, so he asked if he had returned to Korea for work. That's when Jun-ho asked GH, "Did his mother try the powder yet?" and burst into a fit of laughter. Maru stoically asked Jun-ho to repeat his words. A crazy manager was lounging in a high-end spa with cucumbers all over his body and asked, "Did mother get ribs?" Another crazy man was thrilled to touch Jun-ho's feet and swore he wouldn't wash his hands for the rest of his life. The bastard told GH that it wasn't the Yakuza and asked, "Were the police at home?" Maru didn't realize what he had done wrong. Chun-ho creased his disgusting face and mockingly told Maru that he hadn't done anything wrong, and stated that since Maru was a rookie butcher, he would have to work for him for a very long time. He had already prepared everything. Maru instantly realized what a rotten game Chun-ho was playing and scolded him for destroying his family. However, Chun-ho paid no attention to Maru's accusations and said that his little sister missed him very much. Maru's younger sister stayed with that glutton Kim Yen, whose life began and ended with food. Jun-ho threatened Maru that his sister is in their company and might repeat her mother's fate. The boss said that Maru can make a lot of money on contract killings after all. They in the shop not only sell meat, he taught him not that. He told Gigi that with his butchering skills, he could buy a building in Kanama. And he told Gigi that a cool car was coming to pick him up today and give him a job. He should kill a few bastards for him. Soon Chun-ho said goodbye, promising to contact Maru later. GH squeezed his phone so hard that the veins in his arm seemed about to pop out from under his skin. His face began to darken ominously and his expression became unrecognizable. On the outskirts of the city, in a special van, 2 people were making deliveries, Supervisor Baek Seok-ho and Supervisor Choi Do-il. Choi was standing outside the van when Baek yelled at him for getting complacent and not helping him. However, Choi seemed to be the still tough guy who thought Baek was more suited for such a job. Suddenly, a huge bag fell out of the van. Baek yelled at Choi to help him get the bag back into the van. Choi swore at Baek and grabbed the bag. To his horror, it turned out that the suspicious package contained a person, and Choi asked if Baek was going to continue to be so careless. He warned Baek that he would complain to manager Chun-ho Hong. Baek berated Choi, who wasn't helping, only talking. Baek took off his overalls as he felt the heat taking over him. He was stunned by the large number of bags. Choi fixed his glasses and instructed Baek that if he was done, he should pick up the rookie as well. The muscular Beck was furious that Choi was messing with him like this, even though he used to do his own butchering. He angrily reprimanded Choi for treating him like a slave and having no conscience. Choi didn't care at all, however, as he boldly reminded Beck that he had been a slave ever since he joined the company. Choi mocked him for being afraid of the newcomer because the newcomer was a butcher, and he was a pig. Beck's face contorted dangerously with pure rage, as he ominously raised the meat hammer to nail Choi. However, Choi instantly snatched up his dagger to block Beck's attack. It seemed like a terrible battle between a fiery red dragon and a ferocious white tiger was about to begin. Choi further enraged Beck by saying that he had been calling him a sucker ever since he joined the company, and intended to slit Beck's throat. Both thugs seemed to be thirsty for each other's blood. After a few seconds, both returned to normal as if nothing had happened, and Choi playfully reprimanded Beck. As he left for the basement, he told Beck to take the car and wished he could have an accident with his dumb mind. Soon darkness thickened over the area. Beck was snoring in the front seat of the van when he was abruptly awakened. A sudden pop made him stick his head out the window, and he saw a stray cat stretched out on the roof of the van. Beck grabbed the cat and assumed that it probably came here because of the smell of meat. It was then that Beck realized that Supervisor Choi was strangely late. Slowly descending the stairs, he assumed that the rascal wanted to have dinner with the newcomer without him. Slightly annoyed, he noticed that the door had been left ajar, and guessed that the two were probably having a great time. Beck was still holding the stray cat and scratching its back when he called out to Choi. However, his eyes widened with shock, and his grip on the cat's body loosened, and the cat took the chance and quickly scurried away. Beck saw that the whole room had been turned upside down, with broken dishes, bags, and bottles lying carelessly everywhere. Beck couldn't believe that the rogue Choi had actually fought with the newcomer when he saw the body lying face down on the ground. Assuming that it was probably the rookie being beaten up by Choi, Beck tried to bring him to his senses by kicking him and warning him that at this rate, he too would be finished off by Chun-ho. When the body didn't move, Beck sensed that something was seriously wrong. It turned out that the body belonged to Supervisor Choi, who had been mercilessly killed. Immediately, Beck's face contorted into a sinister grin. He called out to the newcomer, warning him that if he behaved like that, he would soon go to hell. Just then, Maru appeared with a bloody dagger in his hand. He mockingly asked Beck if he was also a member of the shop. With a nasty smirk, Beck exclaimed about his lack of manners, which the cheapskates of Chun-ho are displaying these days towards their elders. Maru, however, replied, prepared to swing his dagger wildly around the supervisor. Beck was not the least bit intimidated by Maru's childish antics, and he inquired if the kid knew about the strong cow. With those words, he quickly blocked Maru's attack with his mighty hammer, exclaiming that a strong cow is a sausage. As he explained in Korean, so means cow, se means strong, and ji is an adverb. To Maru's horror, Beck's mighty hammer shattered his knife in a flash, just like potato chips. Then Beck aimed for his fragile head, but Maru warned him in advance to pull himself together. Meanwhile, in Chun-ho's office, a welcome party was being organized. A strawberry cake, some gifts, and expensive wine could be seen on the table. The entire banquet hall was decorated with balloons and ornaments, and the hall was carefully cleaned. The subordinates couldn't believe that Beck had been sent to meet the newcomer, for Beck was known for his wild temper. Even Choi had a bad reputation. One of the workers with a pouty face curled his lips as he reminded them that according to manager Chun-ho Hong, the new recruit was the best of the best. One worker flared up like a torch, asking if these insects had a problem with Chief Beck and Chief Choi welcoming new recruits. A heated argument broke out, and a closer look revealed that these poor subordinates were stacked on top of each other, with the sycophant puppy at the bottom, puffing heavily underneath. On top of them, the aloof manager Chun-ho was busy decorating the wall. The sycophant puppy flared up again at the pouty man's remark, as he considered those stupid puns about cows to be sacred. The sycophant puppy, named Oh Chun-sik, remembered seeing Beck in a fight once, and, choking the fat man to death, he launched into one of his infamous cow puns. What would you call a burning cow? Beck taunted the panting guy that if he guessed the answer, he'd be released. Chun-sik remembered how at that moment Beck had become a legend by single-handedly outlasting all the hooligans and gangsters. At that moment, Chun-sik was ecstatic as Beck had become the emperor of the neighborhood, being strong even with his bare hands. But what made him an invincible king was the hammer or meat hammer given to him by manager Hong. Chun-sik had the honor of witnessing the fusion of the strongest physical being with the deadliest of all weapons. Chun-sik transformed with the hammer into an enraged bull that could not be stopped. Meanwhile, in the basement, the enraged bull struck and overpowered Maru with his furious hammer blows. Baek couldn't believe that Maru had killed Choi with such puny skills. Maru tried his best to dodge Baek's attacks, but Baek turned into a maniac who thrashed furiously with a smirk on his face. Baek recognized that although Choi was weaker than him, still a mosquito like Maru couldn't defeat him so easily. Baek threw Maru one of his cow puns. What would he call a cow that was good at drawing? With a powerful punch, he aimed at Maru. Baek said she would be called Picasso, where so in Korean means cow. Baek psychopathically kept hitting Maru while he desperately tried to block his attacks with his bare hands. Meanwhile, Baek reprimanded Maru for not laughing at his jokes while his senior tried to defuse the situation. However, Maru observed Baek's movements and concluded that not only was he physically strong, but he was also getting faster as the battle heated up. Baek kept blabbering that Maru didn't know how to survive in society and was constantly attacking him, ignoring his precious words. But Maru's keen eye caught the fact that Baek was extremely skillful. Baek was further infuriated by Maru's silence and was determined to beat a chuckle out of the stoic Maru. Soon, a new series of ferocious attacks from Baek began, blindly swinging his hammer around Maru. Simultaneously, another series of cow puns came out of his mouth, but Maru never gave up, hitting and stabbing, and slashes at Baek whenever he had the opportunity, whenever he found an opportunity to strike his neck. As Baek flashed his set of beastly teeth, Maru excitedly walked towards the blind spot he had just noticed behind Baek's back, holding his broken knife. To his horror, Baek instantly turned around and grabbed the jagged edge of the dagger with his set of razor-sharp fangs. Triumphantly, Baek spat out another cow pun to a shocked Maru. What would he call the cow that bit the knife? Without waiting for an answer, Maru gathered himself and slashed at Baek's neck, but the chief deftly ducked backward, dodging his attack. Baek scoffed at Maru's slow movements, noting that even Choi would probably laugh at them. He mockingly wondered why Maru was only leaving scratches on him, and that even mosquito bites would hurt more. Still swinging his mighty hammer, Baek was eager to show Maru how a real blow was delivered. With those words, he began to swing the hammer blindly to flatten Maru once and for all. But Maru was lighter and more agile, since he had so far managed not to become a flattened steak. The blow swept by his side again. When he got down on all fours to dodge Baek's blow, he realized in a panic that Baek had become frighteningly faster. Before Maru could think of his next move, Baek had already kicked him in the face, and as he fell to the ground, Baek immediately grabbed Mara's leg. Along with that came another pun as breaking news. What would he call a cow that flies in the sky? Dragging a disheveled Maru by the leg, Baek himself answered that the cow's name was Heavenly Cow or Hanyul So, and with those words he mercilessly threw Maru against the concrete ceiling with a sickening thud. The maniac was satisfied. Maru gasped in pain, his head numb, and sticky red liquid flowed profusely from his nose and mouth. But Baek was unstoppable. He didn't stop there, and lunged forward like lightning to grab Mara. He raised his hammer with a Grinch smirk on his face and complained that Maru was still as untamed as a rock. And then another tiresome cow pun sounded, but something made Baek freeze. He noticed with alarm the blood dripping from his wrists, elbows, around his spine and knees. Baek stated in disgust that Maru was only aiming for his vital points. It was then that a horrible realization came to Baek. The real reason why manager Chun Ho Hong had declared Maru the best of the best. Maru reprimanded himself in response to this surprise, and then asked if there were even people who laughed at his cheesy puns. Such an insult from the newcomer made a volcano explode in Baek. He clenched his hammer tightly, as he had previously thought that he would treat the newcomer lightly. But this new guy dared to insult his favorite cow puns. It was too much for Baek, so he lunged forward in a fury to put an end to this smartass for good. Meanwhile, the hammer struck the wall with a mighty blow, and it was none other than the eccentric Jun Ho, merrily hanging holiday decorations on the wall in a lollipop hat. It turned out he was hanging a huge picture of Maru, framed in a heart-shaped frame, and was busy admiring Maru's youthful beauty. He then flew off the three-tiered human chair to the relief of his companions who were almost flattened by his inflated ego. However, he remembered that Baek was indeed one of his best students. Nevertheless, he praised Baek for his abilities, as no one could even surpass them. Chun-sik agreed, breathing heavily like a dog. Suddenly, the expression on Chun-ho's face turned grim. when he realized that these comrades were addressing him as if he was one of them. The three stupors were stunned by this action and accusation. Chunho stated that some honorific address such as Sir should be used before Maru's name. Chun-sik was hit in the heart. How could a 23-year-old guy become a manager? Chunho laughed, reminding them that they had just called Chief Beck a bull that couldn't be stopped. However, a bull is still a beast. True to his word, in the deserted basement the rugged Peck began to stagger. Like a wooden marionette, his legs gave out, and blood gushed in fountains from his vital points. The mighty hammer fell from his hand, and he was forced to kneel down to worship the Maru, because no matter what the beast did, it could never defeat the butcher. Peck was desperate because he thought the newcomer was cutting him blind in self-defense. But in fact, it was the other way around. The professional butcher had cut his nerves so that when he used force, all his nerves would explode at the same time. Beck squeezed out an exhausted grin along with a curse as he thought he was playing with a rookie. But in reality, the rookie had been preparing him for a massive massacre all along. Maru put the dagger to his forehead. Beck blurted out his latest cow pun. What would he call a cow that died? Maru raised his hammer to strike the dagger and end those pesky cow puns for good. A short time later, he was already in the warehouse. GH opened the door and stepped inside. The mighty Maru was greeted by a rain of ribbons, and all the employees greeted him excitedly, carrying gifts and other goodies. Everyone was amazed at his stony expression as Chunho recognized him and seemed unique in every way. However, a stern Maru with a dagger in his hand raised his hand to throw something in their direction. All jubilation was wiped off the faces of the staff when the great Maru gave them Choi and Beck's bloody ID cards, stating that he had loaded 2 more pigs. The fun party atmosphere turned into a gruesome massacre, where all the enraged employees pulled out their daggers and knives, glaring angrily at their one and only rival, the great butcher Maru, who had challenged all these scoundrels to a fight. Meanwhile, a slightly worried Chonho watched the whole chaotic scene, wondering what that brat Maru had done. While Maru was single-handedly fighting the crowd of employees who were threatening him with knives, Chongho thought that Maru had become much stronger than he had expected. In the blink of an eye, Maru was beating the employees one by one, making Chono wonder if the brat was going to destroy them all. A whole sea of savages with various weapons kept coming at Mara, but the guy put out a knife, and he was slicing them up in an eerie way, like cucumbers and tomatoes with a tinge of madness on his face. Jung-ho decided to intervene soon, because, in his opinion, this is not the way things should go. He immediately took out 2 glow sticks and began to dance merrily, shouting Maru's name repeatedly. He swayed happily, encouraging Maru to keep it up and exterminate those mosquitoes. The staff members were stunned, as if Chonho had gone crazy. Compared to many animals, pigs were considered the most docile, but at times they became aggressive and attacked people. So in order to overcome them, the first thing a butcher must learn is how to stun a pig with a single blow. Similarly, when the staff went into a rage, Maru attacked them furiously with his hammer. The sycophant Chunsik screamed in agony, unable to believe that Maru had used Chief Pak's sacred hammer. He lunged wildly at Maru, urging everyone to chop off his head and place it on Chief Park's altar. However, Maru was already concentrating on the first step, called exsanguination. This step was to drain the blood from the pig before cutting it up. Maru immediately applied the second step to Chunshiku, simultaneously cutting his carotid artery and jugular vein. As blood gushed out of Chunshik's neck with force, the other dogs rushed at Maru with their weapons. Maru immediately grabbed Chunsik by his hair and put him in front of him to defend himself from the rapidly approaching attacks. In the blink of an eye, Chunsik was pierced and struck by multiple weapons at once. A co-worker with a pouty face berated Mara for daring to take their boss hostage and even called him a dirty terrorist. The fat man assured Chief O Chunsik that he would save him by all means, while Chunsik threatened Maru, demanding to get the knife away from him. But Maru already had the third step in mind, which was called skinning, the first major step of the cutting. Skinning meant peeling off the skin. Maru was adamant in his intention to skin these people alive, just like at work. He saw pigs and humans as the same objects. However, Chunho ordered Maru to postpone the rest of the steps for another time. The bloodthirsty employees, however, were not satisfied, and now lay lifelessly like pigs in pools of their own blood. Maru wiped the blood from his face, and went to the remaining employees who thought Maru was not a man, but a monster. They had finally realized what it took to be on the manager's level, and knew that they would never be able to defeat such cruelty. As Maru approached the terrified crowd ominously, they threatened him not to come any closer. It was then that Chunho reminded GH of something he had once said. Maru glanced at him obliquely and swung his hammer in his direction. However, Chunho continued that there would come a time when even he himself would be confused as to whether he was killing a man or a pig. With these words, the mighty Chunho grabbed the rapidly approaching hammer with one hand, and with a nasty grin on his face, and crushed it like a tomato. Chunho was curious what Maru thought of the people he had just killed, and whether they seemed like animals to him. Chunho slapped his hand on the beautiful strawberry cake and splashed the slurry on Maru to distract him a little. Chunho had already predicted that one day Maru would go wild since he was a butcher like himself. Chunho suggested they both come inside, as he had played enough with the pigs. Wiping the cream from his face, Maru asked Chunho about his sister. He pointed his bloody dagger threateningly at the annoyed Chunho. Suddenly, their attention was caught by a frightened female voice, whose owner seemed shocked at the sight of the carnage. It was none other than a crying Kim Yang, who wondered how one could be so ruthless. She picked up a drop of strawberry cream from the floor and licked it off with relish. She was determined to find out who was responsible for this mess. The still-living sycophant Chunsik woke up and was about to drop a name, when a mighty foot stepped on his mouth to shut it. Chunho then pointed to Mara, and the rest of the staff followed suit. Maru was too anxious to say anything, but then a bullet flew past him and slammed into the wall behind him. Kim Yan glared angrily at him, pointing the gun at Maru and spewing curses. In the next second, Maru was tumbling around, dodging the hail of bullets that Kim Yang was blindly firing. GH figured that if you're fighting an armed opponent, you should get as close to him as possible. He remembered killing the third extra Yakuza with a pistol in a Japanese cattle company. Maru realized that such a fight could be very risky. However, it was his only chance to win. Meanwhile, Kim Yang pounced on Maru like an angry cat, which shocked Maru because Kim Yang had shortened the distance herself. Maru didn't know what her intentions were, but to defend himself, he tried to disarm her by knocking the weapon out of her hand. As he pushed her hand up, Kim Yang started firing blindly, and Maru realized that she was finally within his reach. He decided to end the whole mess in one blow. Meanwhile, a furious Kim Yang made a huge leap to attack Maru, and with her skillful kicking, knocked him down. Maru was more shocked than hurt, as he didn't expect this from a fragile girl. Kim Yang didn't stop there and continued to strike him under his chin, spitting out blood. Maru was completely confused, as the girl was as fast as a rocket even at close range. It turned out that Kim Yang was only so furious because she thought that Maru had destroyed that delicious cake, and swore that he would pay for it with his life. As she continued to beat him up, a battered Maru realized he didn't stand a chance. A smug Chunho warned Maru to be careful, as Kim Yang was the best that Korea had trained. In the blink of an eye, Yang seized Maru's upper body in a tight leg lock and put a gun on him. Yes, of course, she was very skillful and brutal. Immediately, the story traveled back in time to a massacre in the banquet hall, where guests were mercilessly slaughtered, and the whole atmosphere was eerie and sinister. In the midst of this deadly atmosphere, Kim Yang was busy stuffing her stomach with the sumptuous feast placed in front of her, surrounded by bloody corpses. Suddenly, Chunho arrived on the gruesome scene, coolly holding his axe and wondering who had killed the one he was hunting. He adjusted his glasses to get a good look at who was responsible for the mass murder. To his amazement, the killer was a little girl who was diligently eating her food and looking at him with her wide, innocent eyes. As she sipped her noodles, Kim Yang carelessly asked Chunho if he was a soldier from the Southern Army. Chunho's mouth stretched into a huge grin, revealing his fangs, and he guessed that the girl was a beggar. Chunho put his glasses back on and urged the girl to take her time, and even offered a bottle of Coke to wash down the food, while the girl quickly put the bottle to her lips, greedily pouring the liquid down her throat. Chunho thought that with the way Kim Yang was filling her belly even after all this mess, she could probably make a lot of money making mukbang. Kim Yang had no idea what the creepy man was talking about. Chunho then showed her a live stream of the mukbang. Chunho emphasized that it was possible to make money by acting like a total glutton. Kim Yang was amazed because she had never seen anything like this before. Her eyes shone with excitement when she learned that it was possible to make money even like that. Chunho suggested that if Kim Yang worked for him, she could eat even more. Kim Yang growled at him for daring to bribe her with food, and declared that her revolutionary spirit would never be destroyed by American capitalist ideas. However, the shrewd Chunho instantly bought her, enticing her with an unlimited supply of breakfasts, lunches, dinners, late-night snacks, and appetizers. Kim Yang immediately bowed to her new master, forgetting all her fiery ideals, and swore her allegiance. But then she raked the entire feast into a tablecloth and promised to return after a thorough cleaning. Chunho told her to bring him ice cream on the way. A week passed, and Chunho noticed a headline that mentioned a strange explosion in Kaesong. Chunho instantly realized that Kim Yang could have been behind the incident. Meanwhile, a ragged and dirty Kim Yang was busy stuffing 2 popsicles into her mouth at once. Chunho pointed out that one of those popsicles was meant for him. However, Kim Yang chewed the contents and pretended not to realize anything. Currently, Kim had Mara in lockdown and held a gun to his forehead. She then tried to smash his head with the gun, but this time Maru dodged her move and threw her to the ground. However, Kim Yang was too unpredictable. Instead of falling to the ground, she straightened up and suddenly kicked Maru in the face. The two got into a bloody battle, with each side trying to outdo the other. Meanwhile, cheeky Chunsik received a message from his children that they were rooting for him and that the fight should continue. His daughter inquired if he was working overtime that day as well. Chunsik blandly explained that he would be back late at night. However, poor Chunsik was shocked to the core when his daughter informed him that she and her mom had already eaten the eel. Chunsik had no idea what she was talking about, but the child kept babbling that her mom had saved the eel for him as well, and had even bought him some Puk Punja wine. Not only that, the child was told to spend the night at her grandmother's house tonight. In the background, the bloody battle was still simmering. However, Chunsik's thoughts were still preoccupied with that eel and Puk Punja, as both were known to increase stamina. To top it all off, the little prankster wondered if she would be getting a sibling soon. Meanwhile, his co-workers called out to him, urging him to take cover. However, Chunsik was overwhelmed with emotion upon seeing his friends Sung-chan and Ilbon alive and well. As if by thunder, the massive Chunho jumped over the trio as if they were donkeys, and generously offered to let Chunsik go home early that night. Desperately, the sycophant begged his master to make him work overtime. Chunho focused on the fierce fight between Kim Yang and Maru, and analyzed that although there was a noticeable difference between their levels, the duel was quite intriguing. The staff member with the pouty face was curious as to who would win this strange fight, and he was almost certain that it would be Kim Yang. Chunho laughed evilly and agreed that Kim Yang fought well since her skills were top-notch, just like the mountains of food she was devouring. The 3 donkeys were breathing heavily, and the one with the pouty face declared Kim Yang the best among all the managers and employees. Chunho interrupted them, saying that although Kim Yang was someone who had been trained to perfection, but the completely untrained Maru was a genius from the beginning. The 3 knuckleheads were completely confused, so Chunho explained that he had taught Maru a little at a time, because he found him an interesting person. Chunho recalled how he had taught Maru how to carve a pork carcass with a single blow. Normally, only someone with at least a year's experience could do it, but the skillful Maru had cut the carcass perfectly in a month. Chunho found this one-strike butchering to be quite difficult, so Gigi asked Chunho for a painkiller patch. Chunho did not stop there, however, and seeing Maru's exceptional learning ability, tried to get him to do something more difficult. He soon brought a snarling, angry boar to Maru, as it would take even a chief-level employee an hour to kill this animal. The fierce boar was entangled in chains, and soon Chunho broke the iron chains with his mighty axe. The enraged boar rushed away, lunging at Maru and flaring its nostrils ominously, but the valiant Maru instantly caught the boar, using the same iron chains, and it didn't take 5 minutes. At that moment, Chunho's eyes shone dazzlingly, and his hideous face became even uglier with a smirk as he realized he had found the perfect butcher he had been looking for all along. Maru was currently being disarmed by Kim Yang with his knife, and the fight was getting more and more intense as time went on. When Chunho grabbed Chunsik by the hair to see if he knew the meaning of the word butcher, panic-stricken Chunsik mumbled incoherently that the word used the characters white and man. Chunho jerkily let go of Chunsik's head, as this was the kind of intellectual babble he expected from the only employee with a doctorate. Meanwhile, having lost her gun, Kim Yang took out her serrated dagger and swung it furiously at Maru, but Maru deftly blocked her attack. Chunho connected this intellectual description of the word butcher to Maru dash. Since Maru originally had nothing, he could be taught anything. Kim Yang, on the other hand, was alarmed, because Maru was copying her movements with the dagger. The battle between the dagger and the butcher's knife was heating up, and fierce clanking sounds could be heard everywhere. Chunho had predicted that it wouldn't be easy for Maru to defeat Kim Yang. However, it was impossible to ignore the fact that Maru was improving his fighting techniques by the minute. Ferociously, Kim Yang tried her best to plunge her dagger into Maru's heart, but the butcher boy thwarted her intentions. It seemed like the fight ultimately came down to whether she could defeat him before he caught up to her in level, or whether he could stand his ground before he surpassed her. Chunho felt that everyone was eagerly awaiting the outcome of the fierce battle, but he was adamant to prevent the spectators from seeing the result. The stalwarts begged the manager to let the fight of the year continue. One even bribed him by promising to bake cookies for him. However, Chunho jumped off the three stalwarts, freeing them from his massive weight, and rushed like an arrow to break up the ongoing battle. But both Maru and Kim Yang were shocked by the sudden intervention, and so were all the agents, as Chunho was determined to show his audience something more exciting. He then challenged Maru to a fight. Chunho thought it would be more fun if he and Maru fought together. Angry Kim Yang thought Chunho was fooling around, and lashed out at Maru for hitting her cake. Kim Yang was so furious that she wanted to tear Maru to pieces to cool down. Chunho smiled dazzlingly and waved a coupon in front of Kim Yang, pointing out that the Shilla Hotel was hosting a 3 Michelin star buffet for VVIPs only. When Kim Yang pointed her dagger at him threateningly, Chunho added that there's only an hour left before this exciting opportunity closes. Chunho threw the tickets to distract Kim Yang, who ran after them like a hungry dog after a meat bone. Chunho thought Kim Yang was psychotic since she was willing to commit murder just because her cake was smeared on the floor. Chunho then turned around and looked predatorily at Maru since he knew Maru was waiting for him. An enraged Maru attacked him, demanding to know where his sister was. However, Chunho carelessly blocked his attack by simply raising his mighty axe and pretended not to hear Maru at all. He instantly swung his axe lightly and tossed Maru into the air with tremendous force. Gritting his teeth in rage, Maru realized how strong Chunho was. Chunho mocked Maru, who was only concerned about his brother. Suddenly, Maru had an eerie illusion, as if he'd been cut in half, even though Chunho hadn't even touched him. Chunho sarcastically warned him that if he lost control, he would lose concentration and weaken his concentration. He would lose concentration and let his guard down, and then he would die in the blink of an eye. Maru reflected on the time when he turned 21. When his father died, he had to become the head of a family with 2 siblings and another to care for. For this reason, he had to work in a butcher shop to make a living. When he started working there, life was hard. But the guidance of an expert like Chunho made his life much easier. At the time, he was relieved that he had finally found someone who treated him like a son, and so Maru began to trust him blindly. But then he remembered that horrible scene where his mother had lost control due to acute drug addiction. In the present, Maru screamed hysterically with tears in his eyes and tears streaming down his blood-stained face, and wondered why all these dark things had happened to him. Maru blindly attacked Chunho for betraying him. He struck Chunho in anger time after time, but the jungle lion was not bothered in the slightest by these childish moves. Chunho repelled Maru's attack with the hilt of his axe and reminded him that whether you are butchering a man or a pig, the movements must be simple. The slower the movement, the greater the vulnerability. The astonished Maru tried to launch another attack, but shrieked in pain when Chunho slapped him on the forehead and explained the difference between real vulnerability and fake vulnerability. With a dent in his forehead, Maru frowned, realizing that attacking Chunho's vulnerabilities wouldn't work. He tried to analyze what moves he should make to kill the boss. GH remembered how he had cut Puck to pieces like a calf. He could have also rushed forward and finished him off with one blow like he killed Chief Choi. But then he remembered how he had almost been knocked down by Kim Yang, and if he tried those moves on Chunho, he would be destroyed without even moving. Maru realized that he needed to develop a new approach to defeat Chunho. Chunho dangerously approached Maru as if trying to read his mind. He warned him not to be distracted in the middle of the fight, as letting his guard down would kill him. The ferocious Maru lunged at Chunho with a deafening scream, but Chunho blocked his path with his axe, and advised him not to make predictable movements or evasions. Maru grabbed the handle of the axe to disarm Chunho, depriving him of this deadly weapon. However, the big man lifted Maru like a rag doll hanging from the axe handle. Chunho couldn't believe that Maru was actually trying to fight him with his strength, and declared that he wouldn't even let Maru take the axe with his little finger. With frustration, he threw Maru to the ground, exclaiming that Maru was a bad student, and that this was not how he had trained him. Like an immortal cockroach, Maru jumped up from the ground and fiercely attacked Chunho. But tough guy Chunho kept dodging his knife attacks with just his axe handle. The 3 tough guys noticed Chunho playing with Maru, The fat one praised the boss. Another staff member stated that no one could comprehend an iron ruler like Chunho. They discussed that Chunho is a beast and a monster. However, the shrewd sycophant Chunsik was watching Maru's movements very closely. He stated that Maru closely follows Chunho's pace. Hamaru's manager is a real monster. When Maru almost reached Chunho, the latter dodged but praised his efforts and advised him to aim a little lower. As the fully charged Maru launched furious attacks at Chunho, Chunsik knew they were witnessing the birth of a real monster. Maru urged Chunho to fight him for real, not fool around. Chunho laughed, spinning his axe like a windmill. He insisted that if Maru wanted him to fight for real, he should show his best punch. When Maru stabbed with his knife with all the force fueled by the anger boiling inside, Chunho noticed that Maru was improving with each fight. However, one thing Maru was missing was the vast difference between his negligible weight and Chunho's massive physique. When Chunho blocked his knife with all his might, poor Maru realized with horror that he couldn't move from his position. Chunho mocked Maru for kneeling just from that, and feigned fake concern by asking if he was eating well. Chunho's face darkened with mockery, wondering if a mosquito like Maru could kill him with such a puny effort. Soon Chunho swept Maru away with his axe, because in his opinion, humans don't crawl like insects. He urged Maru to stand up and fight him. Chunho noticed that Maru's sword was broken, so he decided that they should fight with their bare hands. When Maru quickly turned away from Chunho, the latter assumed that he had scared Maru to death. However, Maru furiously rushed to the derelict dagger lying on the floor. The boss noticed this and asked, what did he want to do? Chunho swung his mighty axe and launched the table at the protagonist. But he dodged and pointed his dagger at Chunho, intending to kill him. But to Maru's stupefaction, Chunho reached for his shoes, claiming that Maru's laces were untied. Chunho grabbed his feet and pointed out that if he ran like that with his laces untied, he would trip and fall. Chunho then tossed Maru into the air, reminding him to take care of the basics, and then hit him with his axe with all his might. Chunho looked at him predatorily, wondering how he could survive without it. Soon after his back hit the beam hard, Maru fell to the floor. Chunho decided to call it a day. After a while, he revealed the real reason why he betrayed and mistreated Maru. The drug factory that Maru burned down earlier was worth 300 billion won. That's why the Yakuza were chasing Maru like bloodthirsty dogs. Chunho was afraid that Maru wouldn't be able to handle these ferocious beasts with bloodshot eyes. After all, according to these Japanese bastards, Maru was the only one who had to clean up the mess he had made. A battered Maru learned that his mother's addiction was proof of the punishment he deserved. The carnage at the welcome party was enough to realize that Maru should return all the money. But the boss lifted his glasses, and with a dazzling smile, extended his hand to Maru and offered to work with him. Even though Maru seemed unconscious, Chunho said that if Maru worked with him, he could earn even more than 300 billion. Chunho prepared everything, and all Maru had to do was show up. Chunho turned to leave and instructed Maru that as soon as he was back on his feet, he should get back to work. A faint voice came from Maru's almost lifeless body. He wondered if there was a reason for the whole plot. Chunho stopped and listened. Chunho could just explain everything simply and not go that far, not to cause a massacre. Coldly, Chunho portrayed an icy grin and stated that the twisted way was more fun. Maru fell silent, almost lifeless, and then suddenly a maniacal laughter burst from his lips. In a flash, Maru bent over in a fit of sinister laughter, and a radiant Chunho thought the boy had finally decided to join in the fun. Gradually, Maru got up on all fours, and then rose to his feet, declaring that he had always considered Chunho his father, mentor, and savior. But unfortunately, all the chaos he had wreaked on Maru's life was only for his own amusement. Maru called Chunho just a pig. Pig Han, not a human being. And then, looking at him frantically, vowed to cut him down. The aloof Chunho was slightly disturbed at being called a pig, but then fiercely challenged Maru to a fight, demanding to see his ultimatum weapon. Chunho was burning with rage over Maru calling him a pig, and demanded to know if he wanted to stab him. Maru knew that the shape of a pig's tissues, organs, and genes were 95% similar to a human's, so no matter how virtuous a man was, he was still called a pig. Meanwhile, Chunho walked ominously towards Maru and challenged him. If the latter was so confident, let him try to slaughter him, Chunho. On the other hand, seeing the gravity of the situation, Chunsik wrote a grim farewell letter to his wife in his own blood. Chunsik wrote about stashing money for his daughter and told everyone to write a will. Chunsik was terrified, as no one had ever come back alive after seeing Chunho fighting at full strength. This meant that everyone who saw him fight at full power ended up dying, so he knew that the same gruesome fate awaited their trio. On the battlefield, the big Chunho made a huge leap, raising his mighty axe and then brought it down on Maru. However, the guy immediately dodged to the side and the wall cracked from the impact. While Chunho was spinning his axe like a deadly tornado, he mentioned how proud of their little butcher Maru was. He was puzzled as to why Maru was acting so strange now, and if he had forgotten everything Chunho had taught him so far. Swinging his axe furiously to take Maru's head off, Chunho scolded him for dodging in a straight line. When Maru lunged forward furiously, ready to plunge his knife into Chunho's neck, he was stunned, wondering if Maru had been waiting for the moment, for him to move straight up to stab him in the face. He mocked Maru for chasing after the axe Chunho had used to nail him to the ground earlier. Maru's dagger was only a few centimeters away from Chunho's mocking face when he remarked that challenges were a good thing. Chunho was sure that Maru would never be able to slash his face. However, he was wrong. When Maru's dagger slid across his chin, leaving an ugly wound that ran down the bridge of his nose to his forehead and cut his glasses down the middle. The staff gasped in horror, unable to believe that Chunho had really been wounded. Chunshik noticed with his frightened, beady eyes that in an instant Maru had reversed the knife and adjusted his distance. He wondered with trepidation if Maru was really that good. Maru didn't stop there. He nimbly jumped and rushed at Chunho again. Chunho exclaimed that until now he was just playing with Maru and didn't know that Maru intended to kill him. The boss thought Maru was just cracking up when he claimed he was going to stab him. Chunho slammed the axe threateningly on the floor and lifted it with tremendous force, violently soaring into the air with the intention of knocking Maru to the ground. Maru was thrown backwards, and he collapsed to the ground with a thud. The boss was already approaching. However, he immediately jumped to his feet and glared fiercely at Chunho, who marveled at his iron-clad endurance. Chunho instantly drew his axe back, so that it was well hidden behind his broad, muscular body. He then questioned Maru's vigilance, and asked if Maru knew which direction his axe would strike from, left, right, or above. Chunho's face contorted with anger. In response, within a tenth of a second, Maru struck Chunho's axe flying at him from the right with Chief Pak's hammer and smashed it on one side. Chunho was in complete alarm, looking miserably at his broken axe. Gloatingly, Maru tossed Chunho one of Pak's infamous cow puns. "What shall we call the cow you killed?" Maru then replied that it would be, and immediately unleashed a hail of dagger and hammer blows on Chunho, giving him no chance to retaliate. The henchman screamed in panic, immediately realizing that Maru was copying Park's fighting style. Following that, Maru fiercely copied Choi's style and, like a flash of lightning, delivered a series of blows to Chunho's body. Then GG intercepted the knife, and mimicked Kim Yang's quick slashing style and horizontally slashed Chunho. It slowly began to dawn on the terror-stricken mustachioed man that Maru had copied all the techniques of the people he had fought so far, and for the first time he doubted his boss's victory. It was as if Chunho had switched gears, and eyes glowing with terror, he grabbed Maru by the throat. He stated that he had always treated Maru so well, and he still only saw him as a pig, and threw a couple punches. The boss reminded Maru that he was the one who had cleaned up after the mess he had made in Japan. Chunho slapped Maru's face until it was swollen and he began to cough up blood. Then he tossed Maru into the air like a rag doll, growling at him for his ingratitude and for becoming his enemy. After a while, Chunho raised his axe and declared that he had never once used his full strength against Maru. Still, Maru wanted the battle to go to the very extreme. Maru straightened up again with his head down, and fresh blood dripped from his face, forming a small puddle on the floor. Chunho raised his axe and proclaimed that he could not let Maru win and wanted him dead. After all, what was the point of saving one man if he was despised by a whole bunch of people? Chunho thought it was better to kill Maru if he was resisting so fiercely. With his head lowered listlessly, Maru wondered if he was going to die like this. He remembered that he had discarded all his memories of Chunho for revenge. Maru had gone so far as to discard his emotions, to stop seeing people as people just to win. At least, that's what Maru thought. He had discarded everything. But still, there was something he couldn't let go of. And that was his own life. His head popped up and he looked Chunho straight in the eye. In fury, Chunho was ready to strike back once and for all. As Chunho was about to swing his axe at Maru, the latter realized that he could not throw away his will to live. In the next instant, he clutched the knife tightly. His expression became rigid, and he prepared to stab his knife furiously into Chunho. The climax of the battle was interrupted by Kim Yang's furious scream and gunshot when she suddenly appeared to accuse Chunho of giving her expired food coupons. She was ready to kill Chunho but quickly cooled down, but the shock made the gun fall out of her hands. Chunho smiled at her and threw the key in her direction. He instructed her that there was a safe in his office where all their contracts were kept. Standing in a very mysterious pose, Chunho earnestly continued that half of the pension money belonged to him and the other half belonged to Maru. Soon the tall and big Chunho collapsed on the floor like a dead animal, bleeding, and Maru stood as if frozen, unable to open his eyes to see this horrible scene. Maru slowly opened his eyes, from which rivers of tears were flowing, and he challenged Kim. If she wanted to attack him, let her do it quickly. The scene changed. There was someone begging the guy to stop. A young spunky Chunho was mercilessly tearing the young man's eye out. Chunho was known as a man who lived like the king of the pigsty. The place where Chunho was raised was known as the pigsty, because people were raised as pigs there in a special way. First, people were taken to extremes, such as starving them mercilessly, and because starvation made people extremely sensitive and cruel, when food was thrown on the food, the young men would pounce on it like beasts. They fought savagely to get at it, and in this fierce battle of ferocity they all died, except for one pig named Chunho who still survived in this hellhole. On the corpses of the other pigs, the king of the pigsty greedily devoured all the food alone. But no matter how much a pig ran around the pigsty, it was still a pig, and could be tamed with even more cruelty. So while Chunho was busy eating his food, a man in goggles came from behind and hit him with a bat. But every day the same horrible story was repeated with constant hunger strikes and beatings. So only a few pigs like Chunho could survive this torture and harsh selection. These selected pigs were then sent on missions. During one of these missions, Chunho encountered a group of scantily clad hooligans. Chunho asked one of them if he was the bloody Baron Mappo. The hoodlum was amazed at Chunho's knowledge. Without a second's hesitation, Chunho stabbed the man with the dagger he had been hiding all along. The fate of pigs like Chunho was already sealed. They were first raised and then slaughtered. When the other thugs saw their boss lying lifeless on the floor in anger, they quickly attacked Chunho, but Chunho valiantly fought them all and came back alive. Even after returning alive, the pig didn't turn back into a human, because Chunho was lured back into his chains with a piece of food. Chunho thought he was a pig, had always lived like a pig, and would one day die like a pig. However, that didn't happen, because he was sent to his death many times, but each time he came back alive. After surviving all of these brutal battles, Chunho couldn't tell the difference, whether he was killing humans or pigs. One day when he came back alive and unharmed after one of these ruthless fights, his master was waiting for him as he wanted to introduce Chunho to a lady. However, the imperturbable Chunho passed by without paying any attention to him. The master was furious, unable to believe that some lousy pig could ignore him like that, so he grabbed his bat and beat Chunho mercilessly. He continued to spew venom, questioning what the honored guests would think if he acted so aloof and indifferent. Chunho was confused because how can one expect impeccable manners from pigs? The host ingratiatingly apologized to the chairman and assured her that Chunho was quite skillful but lacked basic manners. However, the lady was furious and slapped the host for making a scene in the middle of the conversation. It was then that Chunho, gritting his teeth, realized that even the master was a pig and not a human being. Fiercely, Chunho grabbed his mighty axe and lunged at the master, pondering that he was no different from cattle. The master was dumbfounded when Chunho swiftly headed toward him with his axe like a madman. Chunho was about to attack the woman, so the bodyguards covered her, while the owner rudely pushed him away, warning him that he couldn't touch tea. But Chunho was unstoppable. He raised his axe, thinking he would become king of the pigs. The chairman opened her eyes wide as Chunho brought his axe down with all his might, right on his master's forehead, knocking him to the ground. He pulled the axe out and took off his master's glasses. He put them over his eyes, and apathetically advertised himself, saying that if the chairman wanted to use animals, let him use the best. The stony expression on the chairman's face was replaced by a smile as she found Chunho quite interesting. She instantly decided to give Chunho a chance. Thus Chunho's kingdom was born, where his boring life of raising and training pigs began. During those tedious days, he met the gluttonous Yang and the industrious Maru. When Chunho spent time with them, he felt that even he could live like a human being. But one day the chairman called him and told him that he had to get rid of Maru and Yang. Chunho was hysterical and argued that he had even put things in order after the mess Maru had made and solved things with the Japanese. He tried to defend them by saying that both Maru and Yang were doing fine so far. Ominously, the chairman warned Chunho that if he didn't kill them, he himself would be taken out with them or sent back to the pigsty. An enraged Chunho thrashed his desk, hitting it with his mighty fist, thinking of himself as a pig. After all, pigs are always ordered around, and they can't challenge orders. But somehow he still wanted to save Mara. He realized that if he brought Mara into the underworld, the chairman would change his mind about the kid. But then he snapped when Maru called him Pig Han, and Chunho couldn't stand that Maru saw him as a pig too. The boss even thought of killing Maru as per the order. But in the end, Chunho couldn't bring himself to kill Maru, because he was a pig living without any purpose, while Maru was a man risking his life for someone important to him. A wave of remorse and shame swept over Chunho seeing Maru behaving in a human way. Chunho also had a desire to be human and to be seen as human. So at the climax of the battle, when Maru stabbed him, Chunho asked Maru, with childlike innocence, whether or not he had finally become a man. With a serene smile on his face, Chunho advised Maru to live as a human until the very end. After that, he fell lifelessly to the ground. Thus ended the life story of the king of pigsties who died as a human being. After a while, a dark shadow loomed over Chunho's dead body, regretfully saying that he wanted the honor of killing Chunho. It turned out that the shadow belonged to Choi Kijong, the senior managing director of the butcher shop, the same guy whose eyeball Chunho had ripped out earlier. Kijong ripped out Chunho's eyeball to take revenge for the damage Chunho had inflicted on him many years ago, and prayed for his soul to rest in peace. Kijong then confirmed to Chairman Yu that Chunho was dead, and the safe he was responsible for had disappeared. It was evident that Kijong had a whole army following him, for he assured Chairman Yu that whoever killed Chunho would be torn to pieces wherever he escaped to. Meanwhile, Maru, along with Yang, Chunsik, and 2 other staff members, they set off on a journey to an unknown destination, and were carrying with them the very safe that the chairman wanted. The scene moved back in time to the chairman being informed. The message sounds like a verdict. Chunho is dead. The cameras showed the moment of the fight in which Maru finally defeats the boss. Kijeon adds a disturbing detail. The safe that was in Chunho's charge is missing. The problem is getting worse. The man asks the chairman not to worry. He vows to find Chunho's killer wherever he is hiding. Ki-John's voice is firm. He'll tear the culprit to pieces alive. His rage is palpable even from a distance. Ki-John completes his vow. He will recover the missing safe. This is his unquestionable promise to the chairman. The scene is transported to the video camera, back in time. When Kim burst into the building and saw Mara over the boss's corpse, the guy in tears challenged Kim. He demanded to attack him immediately, showing complete confidence. The girl was shocked. She didn't realize how Hamaru became so incredibly strong in an instant. Confusion was building up. The question hangs in the air. How did the young man suddenly gain such power? Doubt gnaws at her, so she decides to grab the knife. Her instincts scream danger to her. Her inner voice becomes unbearably loud. Her instincts insist on avoiding Hamaru at all costs. The fear of the guy becomes all-consuming. The girl sighed heavily and gave up with her hands in the air. Hamaru coldly asked if she wanted to die faster. His tone is icy. A man pleads in desperation to stop the internal conflict. His voice trembles with fear and hope. They can't fight now. Fatty argues, help from headquarters is close at hand. Director Hong's death means their demise. There's no point in fighting. The man suggests we stick together. The chances of survival are better in a group than alone. He begs for mercy. Hamaru was shocked by this group of bastards, but he turned the conversation around. His question is sharp and specific. Where is his sister? The boy demands an answer immediately. The man assumes the sister, Ha-Naru, was probably taken by Kim Yang. He puts forward his version of events. The conversation returns to Kim. She clarifies. If it is Maru's sister, her name is Ha-Naru. The girl recalls the errand to feed Naru. She chose a fancy Chinese restaurant. There was a problem with the card. The limit of the corporate card has been exhausted. The girl left to get her own, promising Naru to return before the end of the meal. Seeing the crushed cake, the girl felt a surge of rage. The sight caused a storm of emotion to surge through her. The anger led to a fight with GG, the perpetrator of the incident. Conflict became inevitable. And then that cartwheel, and Kim forgot about the girl altogether. Panic gripped her at the thought. The scene changed. The girl admits to a mortal sin. Her voice is full of despair and expectation of retribution. She doesn't want to do it. The woman interjects in horror. Jump from here? The height causes her numbness. Shouts of encouragement ring out for Kim Ya. She can do it. Miss Hanaru is waiting for her. Suggestion is made to split up. The way to the restaurant and the hospital are different, calling on the girl to remember her SWAT skills. The woman's desperate response is, I can't. Fear paralyzes her before jumping from the helicopter. But the man was no empath. He firmly ordered her to jump. She jumped and swore to the gods. Everyone is amazed. She made wings out of her jacket. Agents exclaimed at the impossible. Admiration for the North Korean military overwhelms the agents. A man decides to name his future daughter Kim Yang. A plan to save his family has already formed in the GG's mind. The young man hurries. It is necessary to act lightning fast. Every second counts to save loved ones. Group. The world is approaching. The situation becomes critical. The scene changes to a crime scene. There are no rescuers, no victims. The paradox is noted by the detective. Lots of blood, but no victims. It seems illogical. Everything happened in Ha Maru's house. After the noise from the basement, the residents disappeared. The detective is called to action. Officer Lee is alarmed. Why the incident at Ha's house? Where is the owner? The hope is that he is safe. The decision has been made. Let's go. When asked where to, the answer is to the hospital to see Hamaru's mother. The nursing staff informs GH and the agent that the patient was discharged by people in suits. The fact is puzzling. Panic in her voice. Kim Yang is not at the restaurant. The men in suits took her too. Shock builds. The boy realizes his mother and sister have been taken hostage. He immediately rushes to help them. Even the agent can't keep up with him. On the way out, the man guesses the location. The butcher shop headquarters. It's a restricted area in the center of the city. The young man notes the heavy security at the facility. Security there is at the highest level. Someone comes out of the door wearing black boots. Director Choi comments ironically on the unexpected encounter. His phrase sounds like a jab. How much he looks like a pirate. Detective Han Tae-sik introduces himself. His presence adds to the tension of their conversation. Han Tae-sik accuses Choi of killing people. Talks about his career through employee replacements. The detective inquires about the gangster's visit to the hospital. His question is full of hidden subtext. Choi parries. He visits the sick. He advises the detective to also appreciate the people around him. The detective in turn tells the pirate to take care of himself. Abruptly calls the meeting a waste of time. A report of a problem interrupts the conversation. The assistant reports to Director Choi. The assistant reports Hamaru's return to the ward. The information is alarming, but the pirate grabs his employee by the mouth and tells him to be quiet. After all, he is trumpeting important information here in front of the detective. I had to sink my teeth into his jaw. Choi threateningly demands silence. The sound of a punch abruptly cuts short the attempt to speak. The detective looks at this and advises the gangster to keep a better eye on his subordinates instead of handing out advice left and right. Choi coldly promises to attend Han's funeral. The old man asks him for a generous funeral contribution. Again, the old detective wins the bandit in a verbal altercation. The director is surprised at Hamaru's speed. The question arises, who is behind the guy's back? The scene changes. The stranger politely introduces himself to Hamaru. His tone is emphatically neutral and correct. The man informs him that he was expecting a young man. His words sound like a prepared sentence. The stranger suggests that Hamaru get into the car and continue the conversation later. Then the puzzle begins to take shape in the protagonist's mind. The man in the suit is in front of him. The guy asks the stranger directly, did he kidnap his mother and sister? The question is full of anger. GG reaches for a knife. The man calmly confirms the fact of kidnapping, shocking the protagonist. He apologizes for his abruptness and rudeness. The young man tries to say something, perhaps a protest or a request. His speech is interrupted. He sees a woman's feet in shoes. The man mentions the president, who will explain the details of the situation. The girl has been sitting in the car all this time. She politely introduces herself as Hamaru. The screen shows the location of the scene, the Charlotte Hotel. President Shim Un-young's name is mentioned. President Shim Eun-young introduces herself as Ha-maru. She is the head of the Charlotte chain. Formality is felt in the tone. The guy abruptly cuts off introductions. He demands to know the whereabouts of the family. Another man comes out and promises to explain everything. The young man is shocked by the sudden appearance of his acquaintances. His exclamation expresses utter bewilderment. Ha-maru is perplexed to see the acquaintances with Charlotte. Their greeting sounds too familiar. The guy demands an answer. Why are the acquaintances working with Charlotte? The reason is explained. World Group has requested Charlotte's help. The situation is described as hostile. The agents apologize for the rush and surprise. Ha-maru is outraged at the family being kidnapped without asking. The young man poses a tough question. How are Charlotte's methods different from the head center? The bottom line is the same. The man asks to wait and look at the screen. His tone is urgent, almost pleading. The camera shows Mir's tracking team already at the hospital. Without Charlotte, the family would have been captured. That's reassuring to Gigi. Shim Eun-young immediately turned to Ha-maru and asked the protagonist to sit in their car. She assures the guy that he will be taken to his family. That's the key promise in this situation. The scene has changed. They list their areas of influence: pharmaceuticals, hotels, department stores, petrochemicals, finance, the power of Charlotte. World Group, on the other hand, focuses on defense, trade, distribution, and construction. Their interests are quite different. Security is also World Group's area of influence. Both corporations hid their true colors behind a legal facade. In the shadows, the companies fought a fierce war. Their confrontation remained invisible for a long time. One man ended the war by brute force. His actions changed the balance of power forever. Charlotte's defeat led to a split. The group has split into two warring camps. One faction wishes to hand Charlotte over to the World Group. Their goal is total surrender to the enemy. The other faction seeks to protect and preserve the Charlotte Group. They are fighting for independence. Ha-maru interrupts the conversation. He is not interested in the story. He demands to get to the heart of the matter. Shim Eun-young states, Director Hong is dead, but the World Group still has a lot of power. She explains, Ha-mar alone can't save the family from the World Group. He needs Charlotte's resources. Shim offers to help Ha-maru. Everyone was shocked at such an offer. In return, she hints at the need for his participation in their fight. The hero was also completely shocked by such a thing. But suddenly, a white van crashed into their car, and the Rolls-Royce was out of control. The driver couldn't level the car and get back on the road. The car started spinning and wouldn't stop. The agents were already pressed very tightly against each other because of the tremendous speed. Finally, the car came to a stop, hitting the concrete wall hard. Some people immediately got out of the van and headed towards the expensive wrecked car. The girl woke up after the violent accident and found herself in the arms of the main character, who covered her with his body. He asked her how she felt and assumed it was an attack by the World Group bastards. The girl said it wasn't likely. Shim put her hand on Gigi's face and revealed the plot. Her brother, Shim Eun-gyu, wants to kill her and hand Charlotte over to the enemy. Information about troop movements has surfaced. The situation becomes more and more dangerous and tense. Shim Eun-gyu makes a promise. Charlotte will protect Ha-maru's family from the World Group's persecution. She asks a direct question. Does Ha-maru agree to be her weapon for a while? The offer is made. The guy was shocked by this situation. Ha-maru took up his pen and made his condition. Shim must prove the ability to protect his family. Demands a guarantee. The young man makes a deal. If Shim proves strength, he will become her sword. His decision is final. A guy in black boots came out at the same time as Mr. Pirate. It was the tough pirate director again. He arrived at some temple and was surprised because they had prepared for his arrival. He was greeted and ordered the door to be opened for him. And inside was a memorial to the tough old red-headed boss, a girl with purple hair standing beside him, and a bunch of other agents stood to honor Hong's memory. Just then, the girl noticed the person who had entered and said that he had finally appeared. Turning around, Director Yu Dan asked, "What about the boy who killed Hong?" In a nod, the pirate said that the kid managed to escape. But his accomplice Kim was found. She was sitting and thinking about the fact that she had lost her sister anyway. Her comrades would not forgive her. The butcher will kill her if she returns without her sister, and she would like to eat now. But there was no money. She went back to talking to the cooks, who were terrified and trembling with fear. She stood with a huge team of agents and said she would have to level the restaurant. The girl turned to all her South Korean comrades, but then turned around and asked only to be given some money. The scene went back to the road again, and now the top of agents stood in front of one main character. The bastards were walking, and one of them was contemplating that, with luck, they would be promoted to the head office. They would only have to kill Shim's bodyguard. He had already pulled out a knife and was preparing to kill everyone in the way. It was the manager of Charlotte's Pharmaceuticals, Cho Byunju. As the agents got closer, they asked Maru what he was doing here, and who is he? Is he Shim's new lover? One even teased him, but quickly took a knife to the head. GH was punching everyone and thought about how he was really scared. Scared of killing people. He was quickly laying down everyone around him, and someone in the crowd decided to swing a huge log or bat at him. Gigi quickly disarmed him and realized that it had been easy for him to do it before. But now he realized something. He realized what kind of monstrous power he had been up against all this time. Cho was shocked. Who was this person in front of him? He repeats the question about his opponent's identity, his voice shaking with rage, and lashes out at GH. But he quickly lost his fingers and was shocked by it. The hand was in the sky, for GG had already landed a second blow on the bastard as well. Cho cried and screamed. He didn't expect this, and Maru quickly swung the knife at him. Agneta was shocked when the knife was already in his mouth, and Gigi quickly pulled it out, giving the guy a Joker smile. Suddenly a woman approached him from behind. Hamaru declares, he's shown he can, and now it's Shim's turn to prove his worthiness. The young man reminds him of the need to prove his ability to protect his family. The boy asks about the plan to save his mother. His question sounds urgent. After all, there's no car. Are they going to walk? Shim Unyoung reassures him. The necessary steps have already been taken. The helicopter is in place. She reminds Hamaru of his own demand for proof of force. Shim offers to go to the funeral of the man the guy killed. And they've already been to that very temple. Ritual vows are sounded. Eastern heavens bind the earth. Southern heavens give coolness. Western heavens purify. Men repent of all evil deeds done out of greed, anger, and ignorance since the beginning of time. The monks prayed to the Buddha for the repose of the boss. Yiyu Dan was also standing near the altar with her eyes covered. Executive Director Choi is asked about the situation. His attention is instantly sharpened. An assistant reports a serious problem at the entrance. The situation becomes tense, and black shoes are already coming out. Hamaru's appearance is confirmed. This news changes the balance of power in the room. The scene changed. Someone was sitting on the floor counting their money. It was Kim, surrounded by a pile of dead bodies of agents, who was asked, she is dressed normally, so why doesn't she have any money? Suddenly she got a call that her help was urgently needed, because Mr. Ha showed up. The employee explains, Mr. Ha is at Manager Hong's funeral with the president of the Charlotte Hotel. She needs to rescue them quickly. The woman is outraged at the Yukajang's omission. Her anger is mixed with resentment over the absence. She wanted to go there too. Miss Kim shifts her focus from food to threat. Soon they will have to make chowder out of themselves. A curse is uttered at Hamaru. Recognizing the enemy makes the agents furious. A man doubts the guy's understanding of what's going on. Another prepares tools to sacrifice to Hong's spirit. Hamaru is asked how he feels. A clarifying question follows that the situation is escalating. The guy remains calm. Shim Unyoung reminds him of his promise to prove his strength. He assures the girl that he can handle it, and then is called out twice, getting to the heart of the confrontation. Hamara is accused of killing Hong, and is asked about the connection with the girl from Charlotte. Deputy Kim Min-seok suspects initial support for Charlotte. The tone is accusatory. Insults are flying at Hamaru. He is accused of pretending and ulterior motives. Someone interrupts the conversation. A voice demands the identity of the troublemaker. But suddenly the bastard is grabbed by the cheek and told to shut up. Then the pirate just took him and shoved him out of the way. It's time to figure it out for himself. Choi Ki-jong apologizes for unworthy subordinates, recognizes killing Hong as a significant achievement. He introduces himself as the executive director of world security, promises Ha-maru the treatment he deserves. Someone rebukes Choi for taking all the fun out of it. The voice sees Ha-maru as a gift. The question arises, will catching the guy prove superiority over Hong? The man demands a retreat, declaring the guy his prey. Finally, someone suggests we finish this guy off quickly, who already started to pull out his knife. But the girl stopped him and addressed the World Organization. She stepped forward and asked, is that all they want? They will get nothing if they kill the Mara here. The agents are demanding to restore the honor this guy pulled. Doubt was voiced about the girl's understanding of the glory of killing the murderous Hong. The girl speaks of the only way to restore honor, honest revenge on Hong's murderer, questioning the meaning of the mob attack, repeated questioning of the loss of honor in a group attack on one. The point of the confrontation is questioned. She recalled Hamaru's honorable victory over Hong. None of them would have had the courage to fight Hong in their lifetime. All the soldiers were furious at such accusations of cowardice. The girl gave a clear warning. Shim would not tolerate threats to her men, despite the split in Charlotte. She threatened them with war if Hamaru was killed, and questioned the cost of an empty victory over one man, enumerating losses: no honor, no glory, no gain. A challenge to the brave to take responsibility or leave. She insulted talkative opponents, a brief phrase expressing contempt for their speeches. All the agents were simply furious at such nihilism. Even Maru himself stood in shock. Someone started clapping and said that it was very good squan. Everyone turned around at someone's recognition of Shim Unyoung's oratory skills. It was Principal Yu, who compared her oratory skills to her father's. She approached the Maru and asked the key question about the culprit behind Manager Hong's death. The phrase summarizes the cause of the conflict. Maru was shocked. Now they looked at each other in silence. The purple-haired girl only hummed, and then showed her grin. It was unclear if it was a smile. The warning of a new encounter sounds like a promise. The voice maintains an icy calm. The guy asks about the woman's identity. The question is full of wariness and distrust. The girl next to him introduces him to Yu Dang, the chairman of the World Group. Her name causes instant tension. Yu Dang is named as the main threat. She tells GH that he needs to be extremely careful with her. After a moment, they went inside. And now they were walking surrounded by people who looked at them with hatred. They came to a huge statue of a Buddha, at the bottom of which they saw an altar or memorial to Boss Hong. The candles were lit, and GH was reflecting on his boss. After all, he didn't come here to mourn the bastard. Guy begins his accusation, recalling the actions against his family. His voice shakes with anger. He calls what he has done unforgivable, admits to wanting to personally carry out the reprisal, questioning the strange act. Why did Hong allow himself to be killed when he had the opportunity to kill? He remembered how his boss addressed him before he died, and his last words and question. Had he finally become human? And his final advice to live his whole life as a human being. Why did he tell him that? Why still let himself be killed with those last words? He thought about the fact that there was no way to find out now. Hamaru concedes, "The answer will come later. The main thing now is to survive at all costs." The young man asks not to be disturbed, and bows. Gigi assures him that he is using the lessons taught by Chono. Hamaru vows to kill everyone and survive. The decision is irrevocable and filled with rage. Shim Unyoung confirms Hamaru's status as his weapon. Her words sound like a judgment. Once he passes through those doors, he has become her weapon. The boy smirked, and the two of them were already walking in the temple courtyard under the brightly shining sun. The helicopter blades spun, and they flew away, leaving one man standing below watching their flight. The man stood and smoked, thinking of Hamaru. Shim Unyoung was mentioned. He threw the cigarette away, and while the cigarette flew in the air just like a helicopter, the pirate started to walk backwards, his face distorted into a smile as he foreshadows an interesting development. The tone combines excitement and menace. Next, the location of the action is clearly defined. It's the Charlotte Hotel, Seoul branch. The indication of the time period is that a week has passed. The hotel staff is greeting President Shim Unyoung. An urgent message from an employee. People from Hong's funeral are banging on the safe. The problem needs to be solved immediately. They thought, why did Hong give them a key for the safe that has a code lock on it? Is this another test of strength? An irritated remark about fools who can't open a safe even with a key. Sounds disappointed. Shim Unyoung's order is to act delicately with Hamaru's colleagues. Remove them from the guest's sight. New disturbing report. The problem is related to a woman who eats even oyster food already. Please order takeout before the glutton destroys everything. They're noting a revitalization of the hotel. It's even calming. Greeting the president was outside the VIP room, noting a calm that looks like the calm before the storm. Tension is rising. Mention of Hamaru. He is with his family all the time. Woman is shocked at the girl's reference to the president's sister. Ha-Naru is happy to see Shim Unyoung. Shim Unyoung greets Ha-Maru. The warmth contrasts with the general atmosphere. The girl asks Naru about a possible problem. Ha-Naru complains about not being aware of the events. asks Sister Shim to tell the truth. The girl averts her gaze, and Maru waved her negatively, not to tell. He would never tell her the truth. Confirms Maru's secrecy. Maru gave his mom's advice to rest. Her objection because of the president's visit. Shim revealed Maru's plans against World Group for the sake of the family. She explained, brother is worried about his sister. Shim Eun-young's promise to help Maru with all her strength. Maru's mother thanks Shim Eun-young for helping her son and asks her to take care of him. GH worries about those who are in danger because of him. Shim Eun-young reassures his mother. Reassures her that Maru himself has become a great help to her. Urgent message from an employee. A serious problem has arisen. The tone is panicked. Shim Eun-young asks about the culprit of Maru's team with irritation, accustomed to incidents. But the matter is different. The girl was shocked. After all, Vice Chairman Shim Eun-gyu has arrived here. His visit doesn't bode well. He's already with the girls. The scene moved to the police station. The detective stood by the plan and speculated about the death of manager Hong of the Better Meat Shop. The fact remained key. Hong was suspected of distributing drugs through his ribs. Evidence has come to light. The Japanese drugstore burned down. One piece of evidence is gone. The victim woman's house collapsed. The situation is escalating, and a patient in treatment has disappeared without a trace. Her disappearance raises questions. Meanwhile, the World Organization is searching for one man. The hunt is in full swing. Detective Han approaches Maru. He asks if Maru is the perpetrator or the victim. All he knows about is an appearance at a funeral. Suddenly a kid bursts into his office and says they've found everything. Message to the detectives. The woman's identity has been established. The investigation goes to the next level. The woman with Maru has been identified. Even the World Group informants didn't know about her. It's the hotel president, Charlotte Shim Eun-young. Her identity shocks the detective. The scene shifts back to the hotel. Shim asks the vice chairman a question about his current actions. And he's the heir to the Charlotte Group? This guy just sat there licking the woman's cheek. Shim Eun-gyu notices his sister with ostentatious surprise. His greeting sounds unnatural. He demands a drink. He rebukes the president for not knowing his official duties. The girl just stood silently. Maru whispers the question of eliminating Eun-gyu. His proposal sounds cold and decisive. Shim Eun-gyu rejects the offer, reminds her of the difference in their statuses, president and vice chairman of the entire company group. She agrees to pour the drink, explains that it's to respect the vice chairman's position. Shim Eun-young complies with his brother's request. The wine pours. The girl ironically wonders about the taste of the drink. It is now pouring over the guy's head. She smiles and asks the bastard, how does he like it now? Does he like it? She rebukes Eun-gi's cooperation with the World Group. She admits her past acquiescence, and now she's openly spending time with world people. She compares them to the dogs of the enemy. Choi Ki-jong condemns the rough treatment. His remark maintains ostensible politeness. Eun-young acknowledges his brother's possible offense, reminds her of her father's decision to turn the group over to her. She accuses Eun-gyu of lusting for power. She accuses him of wanting the chairman's chair. Eun-gyu brought enemies with his father alive. He betrayed them. The girl asks if the alcohol is making him lose his senses. Eun-gyun tells the real reason for his appointment. His father saw his brother's failure. At this point, the man turned to his sister and praised, poured by his sister. Attributes the flavor to her status. Complains of loneliness. Eun-gyu persistently offers the drink to his butterflies, ignores the request to change his wet clothes first. At the same moment he grabs this girl's face, he orders an immediate drink. His tone does not tolerate objection or delay. Someone chokes up. Eun-gyu demands unquestioning obedience to his orders. Eun-gyu addresses Eun-young by name. His reprimand sounds provocative and aggressive. He threw an empty bottle at her. Then he walks over and starts accusing his sister of being arrogant. Her status as heiress doesn't make her chairman. It reminds her of the father's vegetative state. As long as the father is alive, the inheritance will not pass to her. The girl orders her brother to watch his tongue and to be vigilant, for she is always one step ahead of him. Suddenly, they were interrupted by a small laugh, and in the very next second, Choi loudly started laughing over their argument. Choi Ki-jong ironically comments on the warm family scene. His sarcasm is obvious. Eun-young demands that Choi remove himself, calls him Yu Dane's dog, meddling in the family's affairs. The guy broke the whiskey glass in his hand out of anger, and with an angry look, he walked over and said that Yu should be called mistress. and in the next second, he reached out his hand to her face. By doing so, he wanted to teach her a lesson, but the knife was already in the frame. But Chol took his hand away right before Maru jumped on him to chop his hand. Gigi turned to the pirate and said he should have gotten the hell out of here. After all, as long as he wasn't cut to pieces, he had the opportunity to do so. He pointed the knife at him while the Chol himself remained silent. He looked at his hands and was shocked. Even with all his attempts to deflect the Gigi's blow, he was still able to cut him up. Which means this kid's not hopeless. On the contrary, he's more interesting than Chul realized. He licked his hand and thought that's just great. After all, now he would be able to break it with pleasure. Choi Ki-jong anticipates the pleasure of crushing Ha-Maru. His excitement grows with every second of the confrontation. He scratches Gigi's arms with a quick scrape. He is confused. The blocking should have worked. The injury causes him genuine bewilderment. Ki-jong demands action from Ha-Maru. His shout is full of impatience and fighting gusto. He calls for a demonstration of Chonho's techniques. The guy was shocked at the possibility of cutting the guy with his bare hands. The man notes the monstrous strength of the young man's grip. His commentary breaks off at the multi-point line. He thinks back to Chonho and realized that it couldn't compare to his teacher at all. He displayed his knife in a fighting stance and heads forward to Chul for the strike. He's confident of his victory. The scene has changed. The hotel staff apologizes to the guests for disturbing them, promises generous compensation for the incident. Someone mentions Senior Managing Director Choi. He used to be in Hong's shadow, but now Choi is one of World Group's key forces. The question arises about Ha-Maru's ability to defeat him. Ki-jong looks at the guy's technique with interest. His question sounds like the beginning of a fight breakdown. He recognizes Choi Doyle's technique, warns him that it's not enough to satisfy him. The guy quickly grabs a bottle from the table and starts fighting with it. Chol now recognizes Baek-seok Ho's mastery of the technique as well. The surprise grows as the skills are demonstrated. Ki-jong recognizes Ha-Maru is more interesting than expected. His assessment of the guy changes in real time. Now the guy has intercepted the sword again. Remember, it's happened before. The next question was about Kim Yang's technique. The young man's range of skills continues to amaze. Chul concluded. Hong Jung-ho clearly cared for the lad. Such a complete transfer of knowledge speaks for itself. A statement of fact. It was Junho who taught all these different techniques. His role was key. Ki-jong diminishes the importance of what was shown. He calls the techniques just tricks without depth. He questions. Didn't Junho teach more? The question sounds like frustration. Ki-jong calls the situation absurd. His exclamation expresses complete incomprehension of what is happening. He questions killing Junho with such skills. The question sounds like an accusation of failure. Ki-jong ponders the reasons behind Chonho's interest in the guy. His bewilderment borders on contempt. Someone recognizes Ha-Maru's strength. Perhaps he is superior even to Director Hong. The recognition is forced. Ki-jong remains confident of victory. Plans to create distance. Disappointed with the level of the fight. He mockingly asks about the limit of the guy's attacks. His tone becomes more and more contemptuous. Finally, he hits him again with his clawed hands. Ki-jong openly expresses disappointment. The evaluation of the young man's fighting ability is drastically reduced. He is very weak, and it was probably true that Ha-Maru didn't kill Chonho. He let himself be killed. This version changes the whole picture. Ki-jong mocks Chonho's motives. He calls him an old man who lost his mind because he decided to give his life for a brat. Gigi was furious at the insults and lashed out at the pirate, who had already offered to teach Maru what Chonho couldn't. His words sounded like an ominous promise. He flopped the protagonist on his back and grabbed a comfortable grip. Chul sticks his fingers into him and starts smoking. Ki-jong demonstrates what he calls a real killer technique, confident in his superiority. This immediately has the guy coughing up blood. He comments on the guy's stamina, suggests a searing pain in his chest. Mockery is evident in the tone. Ki-jong is surprised by the young man's fighting spirit, associates it with Jongho's sympathy. A modicum of respect appears. Ha-Maru parries. He too has heard a lot about Ki-jong. The accumulated information is now being utilized. Ha-Maru calls him a pathetic one-eyed bastard. The insult hits a sore spot. A reminder of Ki-jong's former status. The contrast with his current status intensifies the sneer. Ki-jong responds with a crude insult. His anger breaks through his ostensible calm. He hits the guy again, and it almost kills him. a huge bloody mess instead of the protagonist's chest. Ki-jong is furious and demands an explanation. His scream expresses his rejection of Ha-maru's knowledge of his past. He asserts his exclusive right to kill Chonho. He considers it his unrealized mission. Ki-jong denies the guy's right to kill Chonho. His outrage borders on obsession. Ha-maru recognizes the superior strength of his opponent. The statement of fact sounds without panic. He analyzes Ki-jong's superiority, strength, speed, experience, admits defeat on all counts. Internal conflict. The vow to protect his family cracks under the weight of reality. Doubt grows. Ha-maru fears the number of powerful enemies. The thought of the scale of the threat is unsettling. He doubts his ability to protect his loved ones. Ki-jong scoffs at his idle chatter, a desperate question about the path to strength. Ki-jong's blunt reply cuts short the reflection. Ha-maru repeats the key question about strengthening. His persistence borders on desperation. Shim Eungyu incites Ki-jong to murder. Surely this will destroy his sister's position. He reminds him of the deal. Stock for murder. Question expresses doubt or impatience. The boy resents the stranger's appearance. His question is full of irritation and aggression. Chul Ki-jong smiles and notes the all-too-frequent encounters. The statement sounds dry and observant. Han apologizes for the intrusion, ironically allowing the fight to continue while remaining calm. He held a revolver to the Chol's head and warns of his plans. The phrase sounds like a promise to thwart the assassination, a direct threat. The killer will be eliminated by the police. The statement leaves no options. Ki-jong playfully denies the murder, presents the fight as trick training. The tone is mocking. Brother Shim rudely demands that the police not interfere, outraged at the disruption of the climax of the fight. Police discuss detention for obstruction. Detective Han grinned even more, because Chul is already aging a lot. Ki-jong is stunned. The young man managed to land a punch on him. This fact challenges his perception of combat. A sudden hunch flashes through Ki-jong's mind. His question expresses a growing bewilderment. He assumes the guy applied the technique after a single viewing. The version seems unbelievable. The question is about the instantaneous reproduction of the skill. The speed of learning is beyond normal. Ki-jong expands on the hunch. All the techniques are copied. No one has trained Ha-maru purposefully. His assessment changes dramatically. The guy is damn interesting. The question of Jonho's sympathy arises. The thought is cut short. The police formally declare the right to counsel, switching focus. Standard warning about the right to remain silent. Any word could become evidence. They knit Ha-maru. Formal announcement of arrest on suspicion of murder. The legal process is set in motion. But the Shim girl stands in front of him. She calls affectionately to the Maru. She assured Ha-mara of a speedy release, promised to do her best, asks not to worry. The boy thanks and asks to take care of his mother. His thoughts are even now with his loved ones. Chul is surprised at Ha-maru's concern for his family. He compares his path to Jeonho's, noting the big difference between the two. He learns of enemies from Charlotte and the guy's family. The threats are outlined very clearly. The question of the advisability of destroying them all is sounded. The suggestion is radical and brutal. Asked for a name, Ha-maru vows to destroy the enemy even if he is in the other world. The promise sounds fatal. The vow to tear the opponent to pieces with his own hands is complete. The resolve is unmistakable. Chol's reply is full of sarcastic impatience. Yes, I can't wait for your release, and walks away with a smile, a piratical little pirate. The scene has changed. The agents foolishly call out urgently for Director Shim. The cry expresses alarm or the need for immediate action. The arrest of Maru's older brother is reported. Director Shim confirms the news of the arrest. A demand is made to rescue Maru immediately. Shim explains, only guy arrested, problems from older guy. Mention of world people in the police force. Suggestion to leave the situation as it is. Kim resents attempts to save the little butcher. Blames him for loss of job and expulsion. Kim's sister is condemned for her harsh words, reminded of the camaraderie and the need to help Maru. Some are certain. Ha-maru's death will bring comfort to all. The question of salvation sounds frankly cynical. They suggest ditching the guy and just eating. Sister Kim is dismayed. The food in Charlotte is a credit to Ha-maru. Her objection sounds like a blow to her conscience. President Shim confirms that without Butcher, they'd starve. The question, what, is full of incredulity. Kim realizes the dependence on the one she betrayed. Shim recalls supporting the girl and her hunger just because of being in Maru's group. The girl was saddened by this fact and abruptly started to leave. Sister Kim was called to make a rescue plan. The offer remained hanging in the air, unanswered. The girl's abrupt refusal surprised everyone. She said that she would now go and bring that damn Maru here herself. The scene shifts again to the police station. The detective and Maru were sitting in the interrogation room. The guy doubts Shim Eun-young's promise. Director Choi clearly won't wait idly. The investigator notes the change in Ha Maru. The phrase sounds neutral but alarming. It's a reminder of two cases, drugs and murder. The connection of the incident seems ominous. Suspicion fell on World, but the worker's blood is found at GH's home. Mention of Hong's funeral, which he attended. Direct questioning about ties to the World group. Demand for an explanation sounds like an ultimatum. The detective begs Hamara to talk. The desire to help struggles with the image of the ruthless cop. Desperation. How to help someone who looks like a killer of dozens? The question remains unanswered. The demand for frankness from Inspector An Ki-ju is interrupted by a joke about the hunger death of the GG. The tension eases slightly. Superintendent An insists on being fed before interrogation. His logic is irrefutable. Food is just food, but the chief of police is furious. Arrest at gunpoint without evidence is a blatant overreaction from the detective. The search for evidence is on, so the suspect is fed. The promise to keep an eye on him sounds firm. The detective leaves briefly, asking for supervision. His tone betrays an undercurrent of concern. New investigator sympathizes with the strict supervisor, offers the guy something to eat and talk about. Just then, the guy realizes that Shim Eun-young has already started acting. Investigator praises the restaurant-level food, offers to help with feeding from behind the handcuffs. The guy thinks he was worried for nothing. The scene switches to Director Yu, who is skeptical of the situation. Short. As ridiculous sounds dismissive, discusses the absurdity of the order to bring the man back. Fighting in a public place warrants arrest. Mentions the vice president flirting with female employees. It hurts the company's reputation. The director threatened them with death at her hands. The question sounds icy polite. Chairman Yu Dine links the scandal at the hotel to President Shim's criticism. Her cards are dealt. Yu Dane orders Vice President Shim to take control of the board of directors immediately. The chairman demands that Director Choi focus on work. Emotions lead to mistakes. Yu squints and doesn't realize what's wrong with Choi Ki-jong's face. The scene switches again to the prison where some bastard asks GH if he's full. Now we can have fun. Ha Maru is shocked at his connection to the World group. The swearing gives away his shock. The guy scoffs, quick thinking, but knowledge is powerless against his power. Detective An has purposely cleared the area and disabled the cameras. They have exactly 30 minutes. Someone's admiring the use of power. They just walked in here. Turning the knob, the thug criticizes Director Choi for incompetence in such an easy assignment. Those who entered are struck by the darkness and the smell of blood. They look for a beaten Ha Maru and Detective An. It is assumed that the detective has been away for a while. The unknown man orders Ha Maru to wake up. The chairman waits for him without further ado. Detective An is discovered. Yes, he's obviously not feeling well. A brief exclamation expresses shock at his condition. Someone looks ironically at the man lying there. The detective's intrepid murder right in the station. The blood is still warm. Death is recent. The logical conclusion is that Ha Maru didn't get far. The urgent order to find him first is immediate. Clarification of the goal is to get ahead of the other flies in the group. The need for speed of action is obvious. The tough suggestion is to cut off the guy's legs to immobilize him. The method is radical but effective. Maru was already walking down the street. The alternative is to chop the man in half. The extreme measure is discussed with frightening simplicity. The main requirement is to deliver Ha Maru alive. Breathing is the only prerequisite. The scene switches back again. An asks about the taste of food now. The question sounds mockingly emphatic. An is warned. Ha Maru is already being followed. Unexpected conclusion. These aren't Shim Eun-young's people. The offer to have fun sounds playfully threatening. The phrase hangs in the air unanswered. Ha Maru is shocked by the interlocutor's connection to the World group. His scolding betrays rage. Admittedly, the guy quickly grasped the situation, but promises helplessness before his power. Someone furiously berates the stupid bastard Ha Maru. Anger is directed at the guy who ran away. Threateningly, one asks if one will really have to act. The question sounds like a warning. Admittedly, only Charlotte's buffeting forces help. Hamaru's death is indifferent. Kim annoyingly calls the guy an annoying bastard. Nerves are clearly on edge. She resents. What am I, his mom? Kim vows to find Hamara, as if it's a personal insult. Asked about the final interrogation room. The phrase, "it's time for trial," sounds fatal. The short swear word, "stupid bastard," expresses growing contempt. She draws her baton and vows to rain hellfire down on Hamaru's head. The threat is very specific. They promise to bring down the cudgel of unrelenting justice. They demand that you put your head on the line. The shocked question, "How are you?" remains unanswered, cut off at the halfway point. Maru beats up his assailant and asks Kim how she got here, a hysterical rebuke of the detective's murder. The accusation of insanity sounds on the verge of panic. Hamaru coldly calls the detective a world henchman. The group is on its way. The guy explains what he did. Couldn't let them get away. Set everything up for the group's arrival. Hamaru demands that world group be framed in front of the police. I'm sure their man can handle it. The guy he's talking to blows up with a swear word. Helping out for the buffet, and now I have to clean up a dead body? Absolutely not. No, I won't. Vows to stand to the death for Hanwoo, the most delicious meat in the world. The guy compares the task to crossing the border. Offers unlimited Hanwoo dinner. Skepticism was in the girl's voice. Think you'll buy me? Drooling mention of a lifetime buffet. Instant agreement. It's a deal. A promise to work things out sounding almost friendly. Joyful acceptance of the deal. Instructions to clean the place up and call for new assignments. A short statement about leaving for Charlotte. The food outweighed the risks. Scene came out again to the station after a short time. Conclusion. Hamaru hasn't gotten far. The search is narrowed to the immediate area. Warning. The faction is looking for the guy too. We must get ahead of them at all costs. Indifference to Hamaru's condition. The main thing is to deliver him alive, even if he's mutilated. Kim's been hiding inside all this time. Phew, almost spotted. Surprised at the speed of the group. The question about Captain Kim gives off an alarm. Fury at the sight of the hated captain. The urge to kill him here is barely contained. The realization that murder cannot be concealed. The decision to create chaos as a diversion, and then to eat. Suddenly a shout of, "Hey, Kim Yang," makes a direct challenge. The guy kicks her with his foot and pins her with this door, very unpleasant. The pain of exposure. Captain Kim smells Yang. Her scent fills the room. Mockery of Young's police uniform. The phrase about role-playing sounds provocative. Yang hisses, "Pervert." Surprised the man has remained the same nasty type. The man asks how to stop his feelings for Yang. His confession sounds strained and ambiguous. A sudden question about a gun. The guy notices the gun in the interlocutor's hand. A muffled sound sounds like a gunshot. The detective is shocked. His partner said it's unthinkable. In a police station? Doubt is growing. Officer Lee is given orders to run. The brevity of the command leaves no options. Ian is surprised. "You're not going?" Realizes the helplessness of going alone against armed men. Detective Han Tashik introduces himself. Offers to follow him calmly and confidently. Hamaru calls himself into the phone. His voice sounds surprised at the interlocutor. The detective is shocked by the call. Associates the shooting with the guy. Demands to stay where he is. Hamaru reports the escape. The shot is Kim Yang's work. Her plan is executed smoothly. Detective Han doesn't understand the word escape. Maru says World Group broke into the interrogation room. Guy points out the rat in the police force. Openly declares his distrust of Detective Khan. Hamaru has doubts. Is Han a henchman of World or an honest cop? A test is needed. Promise to tell everything after earned trust. The guy puts conditions on it and hangs up. The bullet hole shines in the ceiling. Kim has given her warning. World Group is here. The attack started right at the station. The guy says she's just crazy. The accusation sounds wild and incomprehensible. He was so scared. Thought he'd have to change his pants. Young likes her boldness. He said he'll get too excited if she keeps it up. Kim said she can only give him a couple smacks on the snout here and then she'll take it from there. Someone advises being grateful for a fist punch to the mouth. Thinks it's a mild punishment. Yang comments on the age of the punches and admits it feels good despite the pain. But he intercepts her hand and draws a comparison to past altercations, a hint of the increased strength or stiffness of the current blow. Did she not love him anymore? The guy slammed her to the ground. A cry of pain. "You crazy bastard." Indignation sounds through clenched teeth, mockery of a punch to the chin. A demand to hit properly if you dare to attack. Sarcastic question. Do they think he'll get off that easy? The rhetoric emphasizes the rage, but he didn't hit her with his shoes. Kim just ran away from him. Rude swear word. Damn, you dirty bastard. The insult expresses utter contempt. She slipped her hands into her scabbard and pulled out a dagger, and asked, how does he feel about this? What would he say? Astonishment at her opponent's unexpected weapon. The challenge to pull something of his own out of his pants sounded impertinent. A mocking question about his ability to handle the size of his weapon. A provocation before the fight. A reciprocal challenge to draw his weapon. A promise to chop it up expresses martial confidence. A sharp command, freeze, interrupts the scuffle. The arrivals demand an immediate halt. A shout of stop is mixed with bewilderment. The situation is clearly out of control. Questioning the identity of the idiot. Police demand hands up, trying to get the situation under control. Shock of a fight at the station. The threat of a drive-by shooting sounded on the verge of panic. Sarcastic questioning. Are they really in America? Outrage at the abundance of guns pointed at him. Repeated orders not to move. The threat to open fire sounded increasingly nervous. Brief demand from the bastard to lower his weapon. The command does not tolerate objection or delay. Somebody's questioning the little cop's experience, makes fun of his threats, and he demands not to move. Guy calmly offers to shoot, questioning his opponent's courage to pull the trigger. The shot comes out of nowhere. The wounded man screams in rage at the madness of the shooter, shock at the risk of being shot in the head. But it wasn't as if the guy hadn't fired. He looked back. The detective stood and recalled the bastard's request to shoot. Questioning the reason for the whining sounded mocking. The guy was glad to see Detective Han. The exclamation expresses an extreme degree of surprise. A provocative question about a second shot is heard from the detective's mouth. If he likes, the policeman may fire the whole clip at him. The detective is amazed at the audacity of the day's mayhem at the station. The comment expresses total disapproval, doubt in the detective's ability to fool the detective. Rhetorical question emphasizes professionalism. A vehement scolding of world. A threat to shoot is mixed with surprise at the sight of the detective. Speculation about the cause of death, gunshot or blunt object? The conclusion is unequivocal. The detective is dead. The constatation of a border crossing by the world faction. The assessment sounds like a declaration of war. The question about Detective An's killer. Pointing out the uniform, I'm a cop, should confirm Kim's innocence. An accusation against a world member. Assurance. An officer will not kill a co-worker is axiomatic. Denial of guilt and questioning of Kim Yang. Threat of shooting for stalking mixed with panic. Confession. Expected Ha-Maru's escape, but not such a nightmare. Accusation of murdering a witness. Allegation of trying to get rid of a witness. Swearing at Kim Yang expresses powerlessness. Denial of Detective An's murder. Claiming to find the body sounds like an alibi. An ultimatum. One more word and the shot is fired. The warning leaves no room for discussion. Formal arrest of Kim Soo-hyun on suspicion of killing an officer. The procedure has been strictly followed. Order to lock up the suspect. Approval. Good decision. Sounds cynical. Objection to arrest without evidence. Demand for a report ignores cries of innocence. A brief affirmation of the order. The phrase "you worked hard" sounds formal, questioning a strange greeting. Observation undermines the subordinate's credibility. Who salutes like that? Nervous reaction to question about salute. Order to take her. Triggers detention. Outrage at criticism of the salute. An assertion of the North Korean standard. Angry pointing at a woman. A question of trust after the shooting. A reminder of the promise to shoot for excess words. A statement of exceeding the word limit. The phrase sounds like a justification for the violence used. Scene changed. Agents discussing delusional plan to attack the precinct with an ice rink. The proposal to use missiles to destroy evidence. Shim Un-young picks up the phone. Ha-Maru introduces himself briefly and without emotion. Shim Un-young is anxious about Ha-Maru's condition. Her question sounds genuinely concerned. She asks the question about the possibility of a call. Jubilation about Ha-Maru's rescue. Gratitude for Kim Yang's escape from the station. A warning about Kim Yang's delay. Intention to go to Charlotte is interrupted, but a brief report of surveillance. The situation instantly goes into a dangerous phase. The girl asked questions about the location and number of stalkers. Clarification. The area around the precinct is crowded. Uncertainty about surveillance methods. Estimate: 3 to 4 people, possibly more around. Decision not to take them to the hotel. The danger is too great for the base. Firm intention to sort it out on the spot. Hamaru takes responsibility. Shim Eun-young offers reinforcements. Short: don't reject the help. Concerns about a possible visit from Shim Eun-young. Warning not to relax hotel security. Problem: the place is crowded. Chaos is inevitable. Realization of the difficulty of stealthy elimination. Confused question of action. Hamaru's solution is to deal with the pursuers. There was a request from the guy to control the situation and mop up. Delegation of rear tasks to Shim Eun-young. A passerby pulled out a knife, but immediately lost his hand. And the guy demanded a getaway car. A logical conclusion to the operation. Confirmation that the requests have been fulfilled. Readiness to act immediately sounds clear. The stalker was already dead. GH notes the tactics of the attackers. Not a mass onslaught, but successive single attacks. Conclusion of the goal to hold Hamara in place. Decision to change direction for a breakthrough. Indication of the need for movement of the hidden forces. The order affects all ambush fighters. A firm intention to eliminate all pursuers. The statement sounds like a sentence. The goal after the battle is to return to the Charlotte Hotel. Protecting the family is an absolute priority. He intercepts the knife from his attacker and points it at him, stabbing him in the heart, and dragging the bastard into the alley. Everyone around him immediately recognizes that GH has reached a dead end. The order to get him is given with a shout of triumph. And in a second, they were all inside the alley. A few moments later, the guy was already coming out alone. Shim Eun-young's actions are confident. She's tasked with the final stages of the operation, cleaning up all those dead bodies, hoping for a car to pull up in time. The anticipation borders on impatience. The glass tilts slightly. The driver clarifies the passenger's identity. A question confirms the identification procedure. Offer of delivery to the Charlotte Hotel. Willingness to help is explicitly expressed. Estimate of ideal arrival time. He called on the phone and thanked Shim Eun-young for the accurate calculation. The message for Shim Eun-young to board the car caused slight confusion. A question about a possible mistake with the transportation. Their driver had just pulled out. Clarification about a possible mix-up with the car. The situation requires immediate clarification. Inquiry about Hamaru's condition. Questions are interrupted by his promise to call back. Direct question about World Group affiliation. Suspicion in his tone. The driver made a scary face. He hit the pedal. The revs sped up, and the car accelerated further down the highway. The scene changed. The detective was surprised by the choice of target. The question of why Hamaru was the one being pursued. Analyzing the attack of a high-ranking person on a private. Questioning the degree of threat to Hamaru. A statement of the oddities of the case. Disabling cameras, murder, but no charges. Questioning the spy in the police force according to Hamaru. Swearing at the detective who wanted to shoot for words. Repeated crude cursing at an opponent. A phrase expressing extreme hatred and disgust. Recognizing the hopelessness of the situation. The decision to go back to the old ways sounds like the last choice. The scene shifts again to a car speeding down the highway. A rhetorical question about a shared doom. The phrase breaks off, increasing the drama of the moment. A harsh suggestion of dying alone. The refusal to share another's death sounded final. GH continued to kick the bastard's head with effort. The car tilted and hit a small pole at high speed. It looked like it wouldn't be able to go any time soon. GH kicked the door with his foot. Getting out of the car, the hero held his head, hit hard, almost died. Decision to focus on a different problem. The realization of false priorities comes suddenly. Surprise at the precise knowledge of the route. Suspicion of super-accurate information in the pursuers. What if they knew about his escape? A statement of fact about the pursuit. Mention of the faction without further explanation. Abrupt realization. Tracker. Detection of tracking explains all previous events. Assessment of the severity of the problem. Linking delays to failure to return home is alarming. A keen sense of danger. Shim Eun-young's warning of danger sounded urgent. He inquired about Kim Yang's whereabouts. The need to find her became critical. Shim Eun-young is worried about Hamaru's condition. He assures her of his well-being, surprised by the method of communication. An urgent departure due to his father's deteriorating health. Shim Eun-gyu seizes the moment to gather. The urgency of arrival is critical. The angry realization of the enemy's plans caused GG to have a fit of rage. The girl asked him where he was. She would send reinforcements. GH launched a world group alliance analysis and Shim Young-hoo. Shim Eun-young's fall threatens Ha-maru's family. Determination to protect Shim Eun-young at all costs. But the question of methods remains open. He clutched the tracker tightly in his hands and realized that there was only one method left. An urgent request for Kim Yang's whereabouts. The need for coordination was growing. The scene shifted back to the car. The driver was beaten with special zeal. A rude insult to a certain yucker. An expression of extreme disappointment. Anger at the failure to catch one man. A rhetorical question emphasizing incompetence. Outrage at the loss of the tracker. Ha-maru's destruction of the device. Pathetic apology from a subordinate. Criticism of Detective On's helplessness. New tracker signal detected. A chance for a fix. Shock at Ha-maru's disappearance. Demanding an explanation and scolding over the delayed report. Impatient questioning about the reasons for the delay. The commander's irritation has reached its limit. Someone is shocked by Ha-maru's incredible speed. The question sounds like a denial of the possible. A furious curse is directed at Ha-maru. Repeated cursing intensifies the hatred, insulting Ha-maru as a bastard butcher. Kim flew in an air suit with a parachute. Kim claimed full compliance. The claim sounds like an excuse. Angry question about additional requirements. Impatience in her tone. Resentment at the strange challenge and conditions. The demand to fulfill the promise immediately. Shock at the order to jump. A rhetorical question questioning the value of life. Immediately, the guy ordered her to quickly jump off the building. The crude promise of violent reprisal. The comparison to the American bastard sounds insulting. A vow to destroy his opponent in the future. Determination expressed without reservation. She just flew and swore at the whole town, flying over the hospital. The scene moved to the ward, a statement of the father's yesterday's well-being. The question of the cause of the deterioration remains open. Confirmation of normal condition during the day. Observation rules out natural causes. Girl asked question about unusual visitors. Mention of Vice President Shim sounds key. Suspicion of deliberate damage to father's health. Intent to disrupt the board of directors. Decision to leave this premises. Consent voiced without hesitation. Analysis of the scheme. Calling a meeting on pretext. Questioning the control of the management. Conclusion of the scale of the sabotage. The need to act quickly became apparent. Discovery of the blocked door. Panic growing over the sudden obstruction. A door is jammed in the president's office. Smoke from below causes the security guards to panic. VIP suffocates from smoke. Attempts to open a window and summon help are futile, taunting the tardy president. Suggestion that she be demoted for indiscipline. A rhetorical question about the meaning of waiting for latecomers. A tone expressing open defiance. A demand to start the meeting without the elders. The threat about coffins sounds cynical and aggressive. Suggestion to wait because of the suddenness of the convocation. Politeness contrasts with the previous remark. Reminder of President Shim's punctuality. A question about a possible incident. Cynical suggestion to start without absentees. Confidence in the right to replace the president. Blaming the vice president for the stock plunge. Sharp criticism of his foreign policy activities. Mentioning rumors of a transfer to the world grouping. A direct question demanded an immediate answer. The bastard was enraged and attempted to punch one of the board members. A request to avoid painful facts. Ironic wording betrays hypocrisy. Confession of vagrancy. The question about absentee gossip sounds provocative. Accusation of intent to hand over the world group. Hint of Shim Eun-young's connections with manager Hong. Counter-accusation. Shim Eun-young is playing around with world. His goal is to save the group and defeat his rival. The misunderstanding question sounds sincere. Then came the angry tirade about the stock dropping because of the VP. A demand for a sober assessment of reality. All the employees were not happy. The vice president sighed heavily. A rude demand for silence from the incompetent. An insult completes the line. An indignant question about the destruction of the group. Denial sounds like genuine bewilderment. Assertion about the creation of a pharmaceutical giant. Self-presentation of the savior of the group. He claimed to have prevented a greater fall in the stock, accusing Shim Eun-young of being useless. Allegation of her ties to the world group. Stating Shim Eun-young's real management. The sentence is cut off halfway through by something hitting her. It was the door that was kicked in by that bastard Kim. checking Hamaru's whereabouts. Confidence in the tracker data despite doubts. Confirmation of the tracker signal in Charlotte. The question of the legality of the invasion remains open. Search for Hamaru among the elderly, joking about his supposed age. Re-examination of a possible escape. A subordinate insists on the accuracy of the signal, questioning the possible hiding place on the grounds. Logical continuation of active search. Orders to turn the place upside down and find the bastard. Comparing him to a North Korean soldier is insulting. The girl was hiding right outside the window. From under the door came an angry question about the perpetrator of the riot. Swearing expresses a complete loss of control. A threat against the offending vice president. A question demanding an immediate answer. Mutual surprise at the encounter. Questions about the reason for the presence sound synchronized. Shim Young's explanation about the meeting. Hint of Udine's order to take control of the council. The shock of the revelation. The outcry of betrayal and puppet world. Panic over leaked information. The insult to the chairman's son. The traditional saying about unlucky descendants. Accusing Captain Kim of disrupting plans. A question expressing extreme indignation. A sarcastic offer of help. A detention order triggers chaos. Scene changed. The girl was still lying in the smoke. A brief mention of an additional factor. The vice president decides to kill her here, addressing the father amidst the chaos. He too had decided to be killed. An alert warning of approaching enemies. They were fiddling with the door, realizing the purpose of the pursuers' visit. They've come to kill, no doubt about it. Identification of the attackers as Shim Young's henchmen. Context clarifies motivation. Rhetorical question about the approaching end. She covered her eyes. A short rebuttal of defeat. Maru's feet appeared to her. The assertion nothing is over yet inspires hope. The call for Hamaru to help her sounded quiet. He held out his hand and said that they would not simply surrender to them. The scene moved forward, and in front of us were the vital signs, sensors. The relief of finding father safe was replaced by concern for his health. The director's condition has drastically deteriorated, causing serious concerns for his life. Shim Eun-young is shocked that her brother tried to kill father for the position of group chairman. Haunted by despair, the girl contemplates turning herself in to avoid a messy fight. Hamaru abruptly asks if she's really willing to give up everything, including the council. The man vows to protect Shim Eun-young's family, even if the group moves on to others. The guy abruptly yells back at Shim Eun-young, reminding her to trust. Hamaru promises Shim Eun-young protection using all of his abilities and resources. The young man urges Shim Eun-young to believe in him and not give up on him, and she smiled sweetly. The determination to lead Shim Eun-young to the board meeting sounds clear and firm. Shim Eun-young points out Hamaru's need to change into suitable clothes. The girl wonders about the boyfriend's size, picking out a suitable outfit for him. Shim Eun-young questions the advisability of going to a meeting that's already over. Girl considers preparing for the shareholders' meeting more important, reassuring herself. Hamaru suggests that the current board of directors may not be functioning properly. The scene changes and a loud, aggressive command to grab everyone present is heard. Hamaru coldly informs them that he sent a man named Kim Yang on a mission. Someone turns to Director Kwok, interrupting half-heartedly. A shocked question sounds about Director Kwok's death, demanding confirmation. An enraged voice accuses of murder, dismissing the order as misunderstood. An order to catch Hamaru immediately is heard, accompanied by scolding and a demand to speed up. Vice panics as he realizes the magnitude of the problem, contemplating the need to kill all witnesses. A radical plan to kill everyone is proposed, followed by an ironic suggestion to talk to Captain Kim. Captain Kim demands to be released, resenting the rudeness at such a critical moment. A threat is made to report Captain Kim's failure to Chairman Yu, to which the latter responds with a challenge. But at the slightest threat, Vice calms Captain Kim down by denying the threats and offering a deal against Director Choi, promising to help Captain Kim with Chol after his own appointment as Charlotte's chairman sounds enticing. The offer is called attractive, and Captain Kim is already being hailed as the future Chairman Shim. Captain Kim agrees to cooperate, wondering what specific actions are required of him. The first order of business is to get rid of the shareholders and literally throw them out of the company. He flew out right next to the hitchhiker. The girl was shocked at what was happening inside the room, expressing it with a rude exclamation. There is a loud question about the situation outside the door, full of bewilderment and anxiety. Shim Eun-gyu promises to let everyone go peacefully if they obey his instructions. Guy shows the proxy document at the meeting, asking each shareholder to sign it for support. Director Park explodes with anger, accusing Shim Young-gyu of fake voting without a resolution. Shim Young-gyu dismissively parries, saying that Director Park doesn't understand the point of what's going on. Director Park demands an explanation, to which Shim Young-gyu responds with nothing more than a mocking question. Shim Young-gyu threatens to show his full reckless power despite pleading for him to stop. Shim Young-gyu angrily declares that he won't repeat himself and doesn't care about their lives. Shim Young-gyu orders Captain Kim to gather signatures by force, ignoring verbal entreaties. A clear command to eliminate all dissenters is sounded, which causes one of the directors to instantly capitulate. The director begs for mercy, reminding Shim Young-gyu of childhood affection and family ties. Shim Young-gyu dryly confirms the memories, mocking the paucity of his opponent's arguments. An order is given to throw out the resisting principal, accompanied by his scream of terror. The next guy refuses to sign and starts tearing up the contract. Director Kang challenges Shim Young-gyu, declaring his willingness to die for Charlotte's principles. Shim Young-gyu sarcastically praises Director Kang's bravery, reminding him of his status in the group. There is a chilling question about the fate of Director Kang's stock after his and his family's death. Shim Young-gyu openly threatens to kill the director's wife and daughter if they refuse to sign the proxy. Director Kang surrenders after threatening to destroy his family, heartily agreeing to sign. Shim Young-gyu regrets the late use of force, pleased with the director's general submission. Captain Kim berates himself for failing to capture Ha-maru, forcing an alliance with the hated Shim Young-gyu. A question arises about the whereabouts of Ha-maru, whose tracker signal persistently shows this location. Captain Kim ponders the fate of Ha-maru and his chances of getting away with helping Young-gyu. It is decided to deal with the corpses in the room first, putting off the search for Ha-maru until later. Suddenly he looks down and notices something strange. Someone is surprised to find an unknown person in the meeting area. A cigarette instantly flies out of his teeth. The appearance of a dignitary causes shock and speculation about her possible role. The girl's hands begin to detach. A sharp shout stops her actions, foiling her attempt to leave the dangerous place. Someone mockingly notes the strength of Ha-maru's arms. He threw the girl down, and when she landed on the floor, he marveled at his long stay in hiding. Sounds like a succinct statement of the guy's imminent death, leaving no room for doubt. There's a question about Ha-maru's method of execution, accompanied by a clarification of his identity from the vice president. A brief request for confirmation of the guy's capture breeds confidence that all problems have been solved. Just as suddenly, another gang member's ass flies into his face. Kim was in shock. What the hell happened? His bewilderment at what is happening is expressed by a brief exclamation, interrupted by a half-word. The main character appeared here. He recognized Ha-maru and became even more puzzled. Now there was a disturbing question about the fate of the men in the suit that needed immediate clarification. The discovery of two outwardly identical people causes complete confusion among those present. Someone vehemently doubts the authenticity of one of the guys, using crude labeling. Then the logical question arises about the identity of the second man if the first is the real Ha-maru. An irritated voice rejects the need to sort things out, deeming it a waste of time. A radical decision is made to kill both guys to guarantee the elimination of the target. GH identifies the man as the likely leader of the attackers, pointing out his authority. GH thought about eliminating the leader in one blow, and then intended to continue with the director's meeting. But suddenly he got a big surprise. Kim flew into his opponent from behind, charged with capitalist meanness. The man flew far across the room. The angry rebuke of illegal invasion and cowardly surprise attack tactics from Vice resounded loudly. A clear order is given to destroy all intruders, met with immediate obedience. Kim mutely realizes the situation only after the blow she received, expressing belated understanding. The girl in the suit as Kim Yang, not Ha-maru, asking a direct question about his identity. The intention to deal with Kim Yang first before catching Ha-maru himself is voiced. Vice demands that Captain Kim focus on catching Ha-maru, reminding him of the priorities. Captain Kim resents the instructions, insisting on his right to teach Kim Yang a lesson first. Shim Young-gyu reminds Captain Kim of his promise to make him chairman, demanding a response. Ha-maru's appearance alone is interpreted as a sign of his father's death, and Shim Young-young demanding action. Someone's laughter resounds over the treaty, accompanied by a sarcastic question about dead people. Recognizing the voice causes shock and a mute question about the possible identity of the speaker. Shim Young-gyu is shocked by his sister's sudden appearance, not understanding how she could have survived. Shim Young-gyun calmly parries his brother's surprise, declaring that she won't die as long as he's alive. Vice curses, annoyed at the missed opportunity to eliminate both opponents at once. He marvels at the complexity of the fight. Then his sister reassures those present, promising protection. Director Park is relieved to greet Shim Eung-young, worried about her tardiness and her father's condition. Shim Eung-yu demands an answer from her sister about the chairman's fate, emphasizing everyone's concern. Shim Eung-yu's direct question to her sister sounds tough. Is their father alive after all the events? The girl calls Shim Eung-yu a stupid madman and slaps him on the cheek. Shim Eung-yu is relieved that the father is still alive, but refuses to help him by calling him rude names. The girl furiously accused Shim Eung-yu of using their father for dirty purposes, and after reading the contract documents, she called it an abandonment of humanity and a loss of conscience. The boy dismissed his opponent's words with disdain, saying that he didn't know the whole situation and demanded to read the document. Shim Eung-yu triumphantly reported control of the board of directors, anticipating an easy victory over the shareholders. The man arrogantly stated that even appealing to him as chairman was now useless, but something bothered him. The girl called her brother a stupid bastard and tore up the contract right in front of his face. She asked sharply if the campaign was for a piece of paper not yet properly registered by law. Shim Eun-young threateningly stated that it was only worth it to tear up the paper and everything would end in their favor instantly. The vice president asked with feigned surprise that he didn't know about things like the law and registration, admitting ignorance. Shim Eung-yu turned to Captain Kim, offering to change the deal, killing Shim Eung-young for the position of Charlotte's vice president. And the white-haired bastard immediately agreed and lunged at the girl. Eun-young only tilted her head and looked at them with an understanding look. Kim disdainfully stated that Shim Eung-yu was a fool to the end, incapable of reasonable behavior, and she slapped him. Kim Yang angrily reprimanded whether Ha-maru knew the torment he had to go through because of that damned guy. The girl furiously listed his suffering, cleaning the station and hanging on his hands outside the window the whole time. So now the guy wouldn't get off with just one Hanwoo. Ha-maru gave a clear order to evacuate Shim Eun-young and the people present first, emphasizing the importance of the task. The guy stated that he had urgent business with this particular person right now, pointing to Captain Kim. Shim Eung-yu shouted to Captain Kim in a panic that his sister was leaving and demanded that he kill her immediately. Kim Yang calmly but threateningly asked the man to keep his voice down, or he would have to stick his head up his anus. The white-haired bastard pulled out his knife and asked Vice not to remind him. Captain Kim assured Shim Eung-yu that he was still going to tear Koza apart right now without further conversation. Kim ordered Captain Girl not to take her eyes off of him, meeting Ha-maru in his path, who reminded him that he was his real opponent. Shim Eun-young anxiously asked Ha-maru to be extra careful in the upcoming clash with his enemies. Captain Kim sarcastically suggested tearing the guy apart right in front of her, calling it a good idea. He pounced on him and asked him to show him all the things Maru had learned from the late Hong. The bastard immediately hit the protagonist's neck. The guy surreptitiously admitted that he was too focused on his opponent's fists and didn't have time to dodge the knife. The man stated that the weapon was more dangerous than expected, and decided not to give his opponent the initiative to attack. After the block, he decided to counterattack with his legs, and again he attacked with a knife. The guy mockingly marveled at his opponent's suddenly displayed gangster knife skills. The opponent admitted with surprise that he did not expect such skill in handling cold weapons from him. He then called him names and tried to strike him with his foot. The man loudly introduced himself as the strategy captain of the World Group headquarters, emphasizing his status. He angrily ordered a better look at him, clearly annoyed at the man's underestimation of his capabilities. Eventually, the blond man stopped, for he sensed something strange. Captain Kim wondered with surprise if his leg had actually been caught during the fight. And then, in a flash, Ha-maru hit him with his head right on his forehead. It was very hurtful and unexpected. Kim angrily called him an insolent brat, clearly not in control of his emotions from what was happening. The protagonist noticed with irritation that his opponent was talking too much instead of taking decisive action. Shim Eung-yu shouted to Captain Kim in a panic, trying to prevent him from falling or being defeated. He demanded that the captain get up. Eung-yu indignantly stated that he couldn't give the vice president position to such a weakling, swearing at his level. Captain Kim abruptly ordered him to shut up, clearly unable to stand criticism of himself at this point. He then took it hard and threw it straight against the ground. The man said irritably that his ears were already hurting from the noise. The man irritably stated that his ears were already hurting from the noise, clearly tired from the shouts of his surroundings. The GG gasped in shock at seeing something completely unbelievable or unexpected in the midst of battle. The character questioned if this was even possible, noting his unnaturally calm posture with such wounds. A suspicion arose as to the possible cause of what was happening, but the thought remained unspoken. Maru turned sharply to Kim and asked, "Does he feel no pain?" And with crazed eyes, the bastard stuck out his tongue and said, "That's right. That's his superpower." Now that GH had found out, Kim coldly promised to reward him with death and lunged at GH. There was a disturbing admission from Maru that his opponent's lack of pain would make it seriously difficult to neutralize him. The opponent confidently stated that even insensitivity did not mean there were no ways to kill Captain Kim. A cold-blooded plan to sever arteries to stop an enemy insensitive to pain was sounded. Kim mockingly recounted his opponent's plan, asking if he thought he was the first to think of it. GG's knife cracked. The guy angrily blurted out that already a lot of people had tried to pull something like this on him without success. Now the knife was finally broken. Someone disappointedly stated that instead of the expected murderer, Hong sees only a braggart with a knife. And with force he struck the braggart with his heel right in the jaw. Maru irritated at the lack of time and attacked GG, mentioning the need to deal with Kim Yan, to give her some love. The man added that he should give Kim Yan a taste of his gun before doing other things. The intention to tie the girl up for further games after the current confrontation was over was voiced. Someone's taunt was cut short by a groan of pain before he could finish his sentence about needing something important. Kim angrily demanded the death of the protagonist so he could move on more quickly. Really important matters. The scene abruptly switched to the guy below, who was lying on the floor. He was from the World Group. The man introduced himself as Bae Hyukjin, head of security at the Charlotte Hotel, designating the position. He reported a sweep of the floor, but warned of the possible presence of enemies on the upper levels of the building. Bae Hyukjin reported a helicopter call to the rooftop, and Kim inquired about the status of the strange man nearby. Shim Unyoung objected to evacuating without Maru, fearing for his chances of being rescued alone. Bae Hyukjin insisted on flying out immediately since Maru had personally asked to handle the problems and evacuate everyone. Kim Yan smiled at the head girl and assured her of Maru's return, calling him a demon survivor, and humorously noted that even the head of security was confident that Maru would be safely brought back. Shim Unyoung thought for a while and agreed to go, but demanded a guarantee to save Maru and received a firm promise. Bae Hyukjin vowed to bring Maru back alive, confirming his seriousness with a single sentence. The scene reverted back to Kim rudely reminding Maru of his haste, annoyed at the delay due to his opponent's chatter. The guy offered his opponent a taste of his gun, and the GH remarked that even without pain, the man remained human. The man compared the opponent to a pig, which has a thick fat layer to protect it from damage. He explained that such creatures do not go down without hitting vulnerable points, just like the current opponent. Maru confirmed that in general with this approach, it didn't matter whether the bastard felt pain or not. The guy dismissed the interest in the opponent dismissively, comparing the superficial blows to the senseless rage of a pig. The man explained the rule of slaughter: kill with the first blow or stun with a blow to the head if necessary. He picked up a hammer from the ground and struck it precisely on the head of the annoying enemy. But suddenly, Maru was surprised by what he saw in front of him. Captain Kim complained with feigned pain that the blow had actually made him dizzy. He sarcastically remarked that a real knockout would have required a chop hammer, or at least a sledgehammer. The guy pounced on the GH, throwing multiple punches. A warning was sounded. If the stun fails, the enraged pig becomes extremely dangerous. The man recommended restraining his movements instead of attacking vulnerable points in such a situation, and he punched him forcefully in the elbow joint. His arm was finished. Kim wondered with a sneer that his opponent was able to think despite his apparent stupidity. There was a shocked non-recognition of the force of the blow, beyond what one would expect from a 10-year-old. Maru coldly outlined the sequence. First the arm, then the leg for immobilization. Kim respectfully recognized his opponent's strength and intelligence, but questioned his ultimate victory. His opponent angrily rejected the idea that he could be stopped by the current level of damage to his body. The protagonist irritatedly stated that there was no sure solution to neutralize a persistent foe. Therefore, Maru needs to use some special technique or approach in this situation. Kim was surprised at the presence of a hidden trump card in a seemingly exhausted opponent. The man suddenly expressed sympathy for the guy's resilience, offering to show his gun. The guy stated that physically traumatizing the opponent was probably ineffective, but there was another solution. He reminded that the opponent is still human, despite the unusual resistance abilities. The man decided to affect the enemy's internal organs to incapacitate him permanently. He used the Chol technique, regretfully recognized that his strength was far inferior to the original master of this technique. The intention to repeat the strike while overcoming his own pain and exertion sounded, and quickly flung the bastard back again using a claw strike. Finally, the Kim crumbled to the ground, and the guy stood looking at his hand. The guy noted that the technique was hard on his body, but was glad to have won in just 2 strikes. His arms wouldn't have been able to take much more. But Gigi was startled when he heard suppressed chuckles behind him. Kim exclaimed in disbelief at the impossibility of what was happening, clearly shocked. He described the unfamiliar sensation of shaking internal organs, calling it strangely magnificent. There was indignation from the protagonist that his opponent had sustained the blow, and on the move, Kim demanded that now Maru would finally take his gun. He deserved it. There was an alarm sounded about the inevitability of getting under attack if the current tactic continued. Suddenly, strawberry jam splattered on the floor. It was Captain Kim who choked on it and decided to spit it out, and then fell to the floor along with the jam. That's how it happened in front of the GG. The bastard didn't make it. The man looked at Captain Kim on the ground with relief. He anxiously thought of the consequences if he didn't use a special technique against Captain Kim. Finally, an injured bodyguard rushed upstairs and said that he had finally found H.A. Mara. The protagonist sarcastically addressed the bodyguard, noting his belated appearance on the spot. A demand was made to immediately leave the dangerous place without the slightest delay. The arrival of World Group's outside forces outside the building was reported, surrounding the location. And among all those bastards, there was even Director Chul again. The scene changed. We saw a helicopter landing cautiously. The girl head of Charlotte was surprised by the presence of not only Shim Yoongyu, but also Director Kim among the incoming forces. There was a rhetorical question as to whether they were proposing to start a full-scale war now. Chairman Yu Peng was addressed with a sneer, emphasizing the absurdity of the situation. A statement was made that the temporary absence of the chairman does not justify attacking the group's headquarters. An accusation of publicly eliminating the leaders was added and demanded full accountability for what they had done. Someone reassured President Shim, promising to solve the current problems without unnecessary complications. Yudan spoke calmly on the phone, even smiling at all the facts listed. She mentioned that the mop-up process had known peculiarities or nuances of execution. They were not limited to the Charlotte Group headquarters. The scene changed, with Gigi running up the stairs and inquiring about Shim Un-young's condition, after hearing from the bodyguard about her early departure from the scene. But Yudan spoke again about their thoughts on what was going on at the hotel. The guards were outside. Clarified that the responsibility includes the security of the hotel where the events took place. Security promised a perfect cleanup of the aftermath with no trace of the incident. Emphasized the complete destruction of evidence, making the place look as if nothing had happened. The scene had already moved to the street a couple minutes ago. The guard was tiredly reflecting on his life, repeating his official status like a mantra. He resented the nightly overtime without extra pay, stating the exact time 2048. His name was Lee Kyong. He realized that they were working here for pennies, even though they worked for the World Wide Web. So he gave a loud order to his partners to finish off their opponents and go home as quickly as possible. But upon reaching a certain spot, the guards were shocked, especially the complete absence of people in the area of responsibility, questioning the reasons. But it was too early to relax. The chief guard assumed the fleeing enemies, warning of a possible ambush and the need for vigilance. The commander ordered a thorough search of the room, receiving a loud confirmation from a subordinate. The subordinate reported the room empty, refusing to believe the enemy had left voluntarily. A suggestion was made about the insanity of Charlotte's group abandoning the base for no apparent reason. Another room was empty. Someone confidently announced the escape of the enemy group, summarizing the tentative conclusion of the search. But how they could have abandoned their headquarters was beyond anyone's comprehension. The guard stated the complete evacuation of the enemy with valuables, calling the situation a disaster. Cursing over the night's work broke out, interrupted by a report of a serious problem. The commander rudely interrupted the report, demanding only information on the location of the Charlotte group. A subordinate reported locked doors and elevators not working, making matters worse. The head of security would have been simply shocked at such news. The realization dawned. The enemy was not avoiding combat, but preparing a trap to isolate the group. And at that very second, all the floors of the World Wide Web's security detail went up in flames. The scene changed, and now Chul stood next to the defeated Kim and spoke about how he had bragged for nothing. There was a rhetorical question about the discrepancy between the loud statements to the chairman and the actual failure. A rebuke was added about the inability to handle even Ha-Maru, emphasizing the level of defeat. But suddenly the Cole was surprised to discover an unusual detail that required immediate scrutiny. There was a shocked mention of the wound, interrupted half a sentence upon closer inspection. He respectfully noted Ha-Maru's significant progress and skills since the last meeting. After all, Maru was so quickly able to grasp the meaning of his technique and put it into practice effectively. Anticipation for the next confrontation with this opponent sounded. The scene once again shifted to the staircase where H.A. Maru and the bodyguard were rushing down, who clarified that Shim Un-young and his family were already safe at the Busan Hotel and only they needed to evacuate. Explained the choice of Busan. World controls Seoul and President Shim has resources there. Emphasized that World won't be able to easily attack them in Busan, deciding to move there immediately. Now the guy understood why they chose that particular direction. The bodyguard pointed to the car outside the door as a means of immediate evacuation to a safe area. The scene now moved to the Charlotte Hotel in Seoul, where Shim Un-young was walking among the staff and inquiring about the consequences of abandoning the base. The plan was revealed. Activate the bomb to blame the World Group for the destruction. That was fine, but the girl expressed concern about the lack of promised support from the Japanese allies. It was reported that the allies from Doe Ranch were on their way, but were delayed due to the difficult situation. Suddenly, someone cheerfully greeted the girl, expressing genuine joy at her appearance. It was Ha-Naru, who quickly hugged Shim and inquired about Ha-Naru's impressions of the hotel in Busan, noting the views and amenities. Shim Un-young expressed her hope that her brother would come and they would enjoy it all together. She also asked about Kim Yang's whereabouts. The girl explained Kim Yang's delay with urgent matters in Seoul that require her attention. The owl scene moved to the helicopter. You already know who is going to jump from it. There was a shocked clarification from Kim about moving specifically to the Busan Hotel and not Seoul. The girl reiterated the need to base herself in Busan to regroup and counterattack, adding that returning to Seoul is not possible right now and it is the best solution. And Kim was upset with this information. She immediately apologized to President Shim for the inconvenience of having to move, and wore a swimsuit. The chairman immediately asked Kim Yang if she was trying to leave them like Captain Kim did earlier, and the girl immediately jumped out of the helicopter, saying she would leave them for a while. Kim Yang said goodbye, promising to meet them in Busan and telling them not to worry about her. The scene switched back to Chul, who noted the vice president's pitiful condition with disdain and warned of the chairman's anger. The vice president excused himself that everything was going well until Captain Kim ruined everything by chasing after Ha-Maru. He recalled the tracker Ha-Maru had seen before passing out, but was shocked by its incredible speed. The character could not believe the abnormal speed of the target on the tracking device. The scene switched again as firefighters were already advancing toward the exploding hotel. Witnesses reported screams from the hotel before the explosion, confirming the tragedy that had occurred. Orders were given to enter after the fire had dissipated, noting their luck with the lack of people inside. Someone exclaimed shocked about a possible survivor in the destroyed building. A security guard exited the building and ironically compared his supposedly crazed company to Charlotte blowing up their own building. The man refused to go to the hospital, knowing the insurance problems for out-of-state employees. Manager Lee bitterly pondered the insurance, interrupted by a call from Senior Director Choi. The guard quickly informed him of the explosion trap over the phone and was told of Ha-Maru's discovery, promising to send coordinates for reinforcements. Director Choi ordered movement to the location, causing the subordinate to shock and scold. The subordinate resented the new assignment after barely surviving the explosion, blaming his superior. In a rage, he called Director Choi a diabolical bastard for his inhumane treatment. The scene switched back to a building of some sort, inside which someone was walking in a blue cape and white socks. It was a sneaking Kim Yang, who was trying not to make a sound in her ridiculous costume. Someone caught the woman and she received a punch and a complaint about her inappropriate appearance. She asked what she was punched for, and the curmudgeon said her outfit was stupid. Upon entering the dining room, Kim Yang was greeted with jokes about her luck with food and compliments about her appearance. People offered Kim Yang a separate serving of ramen with 10 eggs, seating her at the table. The girl marveled at the flavor of the ramen, calling it the greatest capitalist invention. The hostess again became indignant. Kim Yang, what's not washing at all? And demanded immediate washing to get a portion. He threatened reprisal for touching the food, promising to return clean for the meal. Kim Yan stopped and announced her exit after the meal, raising suspicions of infrequent visits and goodbyes forever. A joke was made about her having a boyfriend based on her strange behavior and phrasing. The scene shifted to the shower. Water was pouring and someone was humming an uncomplicated tune. Yes, so much so that it could be heard outside the door. There was a bag, and out of the bag was a Polaroid photograph. It was a picture of Shim Eun-young with her mom, right? The scene changed as the girl was freshly bathed and ran down the hallway. She triumphantly reported the accomplishment of the washing mission, demanding the promised ramen. He complained of a rumbling stomach, inquiring about the whereabouts of his table mates. But suddenly she saw one person on the floor, and then a woman. Everyone was on the floor. An agent sat in front of her, expressing his displeasure at Director Choi sending for Ha-Mara, but the bottom line was that Kim Yang was here. The guard resented the director's irresponsibility in sending him without a background check. He bitterly accepted the need to fight Kim Yang after the recent explosion, denying the brutality. The character attributed the appearance to a summons from Director Choi, noting other people's bodies at the site. He added that his co-workers are strict in their work, and they're the ones who took everyone down. He said she must know their methods, reminding Kim Yang of her past in their ranks. He took aim in cold blood, calling it a job, and ordered him to shoot first. Kim asked him to shut his mouth, for he had acted like a fucking bastard. The agent gently asked Kim Yang not to get angry, trying to calm the furious woman down. The man justified that he wasn't at fault, but was only following Director Choi's orders under pressure. He pointed at the other men, confirming the massed operation against her group, and suggested to disperse peacefully, explaining the lack of purpose to capture her specifically. But Kim instantly pulled a small revolver out of her sleeve and started shooting everything around her. After killing 4 agents, she kept firing. And when she ran out of ammo, she jumped on one of them and grabbed his silenced pistol, quickly breaking the guy's arm. And then she kept shooting heads, knocking people out quickly, for she was on her way to the main agent, who was standing behind the other and shockingly noticed Kim Yan's extraordinary rage, asking the reason for the anger. But Kim Yang was already right in front of him, and it was obvious that she was many times stronger than everyone here. The man tiredly offered to stop the fight, referring to the enemies already eliminated, reminded that she had already defeated everyone and he had barely survived getting here. Suddenly, he shifted his attention. The girl had already pounced on the food and was hungrily eating her ramen with gusto. The guard suddenly realized the real reason for her anger, the usual post-fight hunger, only there was a problem. He had already put out his cigarette in the ramen, but okay, she had already eaten it. The guard came closer and promised a delicious meal after the escape in exchange for keeping quiet about the meeting. But Kim Yang was already loading her gun and skeptically asked about the delicious food, not believing the promise. She turned around and pointed the barrel at him, saying that nothing compares to the ramen at their establishment in terms of taste. The scene switched to a rainy street, along which ran a huge bunch of people looking for the injured Kim Yang, rebuking world livestock for being cruel. Some vowed to kill her on the spot upon finding her, making no secret of their hatred. Kim stood by the wall in the cold street. Kim Yang gave up, unable to go any further from the cold and hunger. She collapsed on the dirty asphalt in a puddle. She resigned herself to her eventual death, dreaming of a hot ramen for last. The woman added that she would die without regrets if she had time for a very tasty and hearty meal. She closed her eyes. After a while, she opened them and remembered how someone ironically marveled at Kim Yang's long sleep after the incidents. There was concern about her condition after 20 hours without waking up. Someone noted Kim Yang's inhuman sleep with amazement, suggesting the nickname Beast for endurance. He stated the futility of waiting for a sleeper and suggested eating ramen without her. And then she immediately awoke, blissfully welcoming the long-awaited ramen, praising the comfort of the humble abode. An argument erupted about adding ramen, advice on streaming mukbang, and distributing portions among everyone. Kim Yang resented the capitalistic approach to food and the indifference to her plight. No one asked her any unnecessary questions. Someone parried that these were the laws of the market, suggesting a riot but leaving the food for Yang. She was even better off there than the place she was born in. They confirmed the intention to leave a portion, noting her phenomenal slimness in spite of her appetite. It was that very family that had become her true and cozy home. But it came back to the present as she tearfully took aim at the bastard that had destroyed her family. She immediately tried to shoot him, but the guy quickly dodged. He vehemently denied his guilt in the incident, defending himself against the accusations, and punching Kim in the face. He recalled arriving without medical attention after being seriously injured. The girl immediately promised to kill everyone present to relieve the mental stress. The man tried to block the blow with his foot, but did not succeed well. There was a rude insult to the woman, reinforced with foul language. She immediately sped up and hit the man in the face with force from her knee. He was sharply ordered to shut up and stop whining in a critical situation. Someone complained irritably about the tedious overtime at night, and the girl didn't even listen to his complaints. Here she is, of course, bad. He warned of the consequences of ignoring his words, without elaborating on the details. The man claimed the limit of patience after days of tension and fatigue. He was accused of lying, refusing to believe in the veracity of the information voiced. He passively accepted the disbelief, noting the time and hatred for the 2 days' work. The man gave an ultimatum to finish everything in 10 seconds without delay. The scene shifted to a fast-moving car on the road. He tracked Mr. Lee's arrival through the data, and decided to head towards Busan where Shim Elinyong was hiding. The guy took the news of Busan with trepidation, knowing the region's impregnability. He described the geography of Busan, the mountains, the sea, and the fortifications created for defense back in the last war. The fellow expressed despair at the impossibility of attacking the fortress where the target had taken refuge. His opponent calmed him down by deploying the argument that if Shim Elinyong was inside, he couldn't get out. Now a whole motorcade of expensive and fast cars was already traveling with them. The scene changed. The timer was inexorably counting down the last seconds before the decisive action. Now Kim tried to shoot him again, but the guy quickly dodged. The very next second, the guy decided to attack her with his knife, but she blocked it and kept shooting. Now he pushed off with one foot, and drove his foot with force right into Kim Yang's stomach. Finally, the first decent punch. But Kim Yang wasn't going to just stand there. With her fists, she landed a couple of hard blows on the bastard's head. The man lunged again, but Kim Yang managed to dodge it. With 2 seconds left, the guy's sword got stuck in the ground, but he quickly pulled it out. And in the next instant, he pointed it towards the girl, slashing her bust. The guy annoyedly stated the 10-second limit had been broken, preparing for the next fight. He was adamant about finishing the job now, despite the threats. Kim challenged her opponent to a fight, using rough handling to reinforce the challenge. She vowed not to let her enemy go even at the cost of her own life, even after death, adding that she would rather sell her soul than let him leave, suddenly surprised at the half-word. For the girl had jumped back with her back straight through the window, sarcastically offering eternal rest to someone so eager to finish his shift. Lastly, she pointed her gun at him. That was how she decided to give her enemy eternal rest. At first it seemed that she was crazy, and just jumped out of the window and missed the last shot. But the man understood. She jumped out of the building to shoot the gas pipe and blow the place up. Immediately, a huge explosion went off all over the neighborhood and the block where the delicious ramen was. Chul and Vice drove up to the scene and bluntly questioned Manager Lee's style, noting the atypical mess of methods. Chul looked at it and realized the forcefully dirty work. Lee would never have done it that way. Then he shifted his gaze and saw, amongst the heap of agitated crowd, a girl running towards the stairs. It was Kim Yang. She was running outside the Blue Light Veterinary Clinic. Her pursuers ran after her and declared Kim Yang a traitor, ordering her to search outside the hospital for Amal and kill her on the spot. Meanwhile, inside her, the vet stood in shock with the beautiful dog, standing there without a sound, because the girl had ordered him to be quiet. Kim Yang stood with her wound and tried to call someone. She obviously needed help, but there was a Chul standing outside who looked under his feet and saw a trail of blood. He looked closely to see where they led, and the trail led to the very same Blue Light Veterinary Clinic. A small blue van was already parked outside it. It hid the entrance, but as soon as it drove off, that Kim had gone inside the animal clinic. Inside staff asked in surprise about the reason for the visit to the medical facility, assuming a medical checkup. Chul stood menacingly in front of them and asked about the injured woman admitted today, confirming the search for Kim Yang. The doctor reported that she came in and asked for her wounds to be treated, stole her shoes after treatment, and left through the main entrance. There was a sound of bewilderment at the lack of footprints at the exit except for the group of women. A command was given to pursue the very blue truck under the cover of which the target had fled. But it was already speeding through the city. Inside sat the bodyguard and Ha-Maru, who shockingly asked the girl why she was here, and not in Busan with Shim Un-young. He turned around and asked, why did she decide to turn to Seoul in the middle of the road? The girl explained that she had a couple things to do before tomorrow, but damn, she was tired. The guy demanded to explain the urgent business while chasing them, but the girl said it was personal. The girl asked him to stop asking and assured him that her luggage would save their lives, earning her thanks later. And so they drove on down this winding highway. The streetlights came on even harder, the road rumbled on, and from around the bend, the headlights of another car immediately came on. It was once again the motorcade of bastards who were already on their way to the souls of the protagonist and Kim Yang. The scene once again returned to the Charlotte Hotel in Busan for an emergency meeting. There was some sort of ball of high-ranking, rich and cool people. Everyone was sitting at a social gathering. Shim Un-young thanked Director Jang for her quick response to her call. The director expressed doubts about the forces against World, but the girl said it would be okay. He heard from the girl about joining the ranks, and someone in a rage accused Ha-Mara of killing 3 of their men during the escape. It was those drug bastards who described 300 billion won in damages for destroying their establishment, and mentioned Hong's promise of compensation, but he too was killed by Ha-Maru. Angrily demanded Ha-Maru's current coordinates for immediate retribution. It was Takanaka Yoshinori. The girl informed them of Mako's imminent arrival, asking them to examine important documents first. The head of the Japanese mafia immediately snatched up the package. When he opened it, he realized that it wasn't money. Somebody resented paper instead of money, demanding real guarantees. Shim insisted on examining the documents, promising a favorable solution for everyone. The bandit jabbed at the documents again. Maybe they'd give him some real estate as an apology? But he wondered, trying to read as deeply as possible into the text. The girl confidently presented them with documents about the World Group's financial machinations with Dowei Farm. He explained that the embargo evidence would help them forge new strategic alliances. The scene shifted again to the highway. Someone questioned the reliability of the old car, fearing they would not make it to Busan alive. The bodyguard promised to change transportation after leaving the World Group's control zone. Just then, some cool car cut them off and they barely braked and swerved. But then the car slammed into them, into the side of them, trying to push them off the road and stop them. The guy resented the disrespect, because it was probably because of the sight of their wrecked car. There was a shout of pursuit by World Group forces, confirming the worst fears. Their vehicles surrounded them on all sides, and everyone was trying to stop the heroes on the road in some way. The bodyguard immediately realized that they had to break through by any means necessary. He reached for the handle of the checkpoint and demanded a firm grip before the dangerous maneuver of leaving the chase. He saw a gap between the bastards' vehicles and quickly ducked into it. Kim Yang immediately praised the bodyguard for his skill, but noted the lack of breakaway. The guy realized that they were still on their tail, and the main task now was to break away or get rid of the pursuers. The girl confirmed the foresight of the situation by pulling out the special equipment she had stockpiled. She demonstrated the heavy weapon, calling it the People's Lightning to strike, and opened the trunk. Kim Yang reminded the importance of the items she had brought, demonstrating firepower, and now there were 2 cars in front of her, the windshields of which showed faces in shock at what was about to happen. Kim took proper aim and fired. She aimed and hit the tire of the car in front of her, and while the first one was losing control, Kim was already firing at the wheels of the other car. These actions led to a quick collision between the 2 cars, and the ensuing rollover. They had definitely gotten rid of several pursuers already. She turned to her partners and said that this is it. The power of her weapon took the bastards down so easily. The girl tried to say that here was her luggage and really came in handy, but their friend's van shook violently, because the car in front of them braked and tried to stop them. All 3 of the remaining cars worked to slow the van down and smoke the bastards out. When the car came to a complete stop, a wounded girl with a rifle in front of her jumped out of the back of the van. She was already aiming and shouting that she was going to show the light of revolution. But suddenly something stopped her and surprised her. She stopped aiming. In front of her, Ha-Maru came out of the van with a knife, and ran further along the roofs of the cars, at the same time jumping up to them and neutralizing all the pursuers who also had knives. While he was beating one of them, the others were just sitting there in shock and fear at the brutality and power of the protagonist. But fear didn't help him survive. Hamaru caught up with them, even though they didn't try to resist. Soon, strawberry jam splattered all around it all. Someone identified Hamaru with panic, warning of his appearance nearby. The enemy vowed to kill him in a rage, using a crude swear word to reinforce the threat. But they were quickly neutralized with 3 shots. The guy got out of the car and was told that he must have lost his mind since he was acting so boldly. Maru looked at her, and the girl with the rifle reminded him that she had saved his life, hinting that he would owe her his life. Maru inquired about the method of tracking, suspecting the presence of a hidden tracker. He asked, "Did Kim definitely throw it away?" Yan confirmed that she had. They got into the car and argued about whether they should transfer to the enemy car, which was clearly faster but belonged to a world organization. The protagonist suggested that they stay put and swap the enemy car where they had originally intended to do so. An order sounded over the radio to block all roads into Busan and direct Kim Yan to the ambush. Kim Yan shockingly interjected about blocking the roads, realizing the seriousness of the threat. The guard realized their situation. Only sea or air routes remained. But the company is watching the departures and there's no way to get to the ship in Busan at all. Kim offered to swim just to get there. Hamaru suddenly thought of a possible solution to the escape problem. He mentioned an acquaintance at Incheon Port who was able to provide a boat. The guy clarified that the friend owned a boat suitable for their escape. The acquaintance shockingly asked if the huge ship was the friend's boat, and asked, where did he get such friends from? Hamaru corrected him, pointing out that their boat was not this boat, but that other boat over there. It was a small boat, but still cool. A girl greeted them from her deck, and Maru asked, where did he get such pretty friends? But he said it wasn't her boat. His friend is the guy among the girls. Hamaru's old friend happily called out to him, delighted at the unexpected meeting. They introduced the friend as Kim Ki-soon, an old comrade of Hamaru's from the past. In a moment, the yacht was already moored. The girls playfully called Ki-soon to stay, but he politely declined, referring to a friend. The man flirtatiously replied to the ladies, but explained the urgent search by his friend. Maru looked at all this and realized that Kim Ki-soon hadn't changed at all. And at that moment, a guy in a red Hawaii started running towards the protagonist to meet him. Kim looked at all this and had a strange feeling, saying Maru's name to himself. But instead of a friend, Ki-soon ran up to the girl. Very unexpected. Apparently he is a catcher. He immediately took off his Hawaii and threw it over the girl, warning that the sea breeze could be detrimental to her health in her current state. The stranger gallantly asked the woman's name, eliciting a sharply negative reaction. He kissed her hand. With disgust, the girl sent him away and slapped the 2 balls between her legs. Very unpleasant. She rudely rejected the advances, proceeded to beat up the guy who called on all his girlfriends to come to his aid. The bodyguard advised to settle the matter with the friend diplomatically, avoiding conflict, and to get out of here as quickly as possible. Suddenly, a faint voice of a guy came to them from the floor, asking them not to apologize. Ki-soon clarified the end goal. They needed to get to Busan quickly by any means possible. The scene changed to the final meeting, the lobby of the Charlot Hotel in Busan, for final instructions. Shim with the report urged people to fight for life, not death, demonstrating world's triple superiority. The seriousness of the enemy's outnumbering and the risks of heavy casualties in a clash were emphasized. President Kim Dong-ho just sat and listened to the speech. He was the head of a trading network. President Min Chang-seok condemned the victory at the cost of the future, calling such a price meaningless. President Takanaka Yoshinori urged his colleagues to live for glory instead of posthumous honors. Min Chang-seok then asked Shim Eun-young for the floor, receiving permission. He directly asked about the realistic chances of winning against World, demanding an honest answer. Shim Eun-young estimated the probability of victory at 10% with spontaneous resistance. The president of pharmaceuticals was surprised. She raised the chance to 50% with a clear plan and unity among everyone present. Shim Eun-young raised the chance of victory to 80% with strategic execution of the plan by all participants. She firmly stated her belief in their overall victory without doubting the success of the operation. She repeated the 80% figure as the probability of defeating the world group under ideal conditions. Everyone was shocked. One of the presidents even started clapping at the woman's oratory. And then all the co-conspirators stood up and started clapping for their new president for whom they could do their best. Watching all of this, Shim dismissed the 80% chance as not enough to be completely sure. Shim Un-young stated that 100% victory was only possible with H.A. Maru's personal involvement. He was their key to victory. The scene changed again to a yacht with Kim Yan sitting on it and looking at a picture. It was the same Polaroid photo. She was looking at it and smiling. Someone noticed the family photo, wondering about its origin and meaning. The guy suggested the resemblance of the woman in the photo to her North Korean mother. Kim Yan admitted that he didn't know his mother's fate, whether she was alive or had moved to the south. She said that after moving to South Korea, she tried to find many people to replace her mother, but that bastard guard killed everyone, her whole new family. She cursed the unknown man in a rage. Maru at that moment decided to support her and opened a can of cold beer, offered a drink before the long journey, knowing the lack of rest upon arrival. Maru offered to rest now while they had the chance, receiving a compliment from the girl for her heartfelt words. Yi apologized for the long run without snacks, wishing for at least a fish for a snack. The girl was sarcastically suggested to fish overboard if one wanted a snack so badly. After a few moments, Big Shadow came downstairs and asked the red-headed Kisume about the possibility of leaving the yacht unmanned while he talked. Kim explained the operation of the autopilot, asking the real purpose of the questions. The bodyguard pointed the barrel at the red-headed kid's head and said he had business to attend to. He chided the interlocutor for knowing the destination even without information from Maru, suspecting a connection to World. The interlocutor parried that such knowledge indicated his connection to the Charlotte group. Suddenly, the guy threw 3 fingers up and the guard asked what it meant. Kim promised a full understanding of the situation after answering 3 key questions. First, she knows about H.A. Maru's long-time employment at the butcher shop. Second, he knows about the rumors and that there is a war coming between Charlotte and the World Company. Third, they've announced information about road and airspace closures as a consequence of the conflict. That's how he understood it. The interlocutor concluded that Maru was involved in the corporate war, and Kim Yang's injuries are no joke. It means the situation is out of control. He logically assumed escape by sea because of the blockade of land and air routes. The only option left for him is to move by sea, but everyone knows there are no shipping routes to Incheon, so their target is Busan. Kim Ji-soon confirmed the call about the boat, but expressed surprise at Maru's involvement in the conflict. He demanded a definitive explanation about the reasons for such large-scale events. The bodyguard lowered his hand and asked to ask Kim one more question. He asked him about his motives for helping Maru, even while realizing the huge risks to the savior. Kim Ji-soon hesitated, mentioning only Maru at first, and then the entire Maru family as a key reason for his decision. He confessed that it was Maru's family that had saved his life in the past. It was late at night outside. The guard stood and watched the whole action, a little shocked after this information. Then, as soon as he came out, Maru stood next to him and asked if the guard was still suspicious of his friend who was helping them in a dangerous situation. The bodyguard turned around and asked Maru what kind of person is Kim Ki-soon. They listed the friend's impressive accomplishments. Grandmaster at 13, advanced degrees, entered the Mensa Society, published in scientific journals in his 20s, turned down all the companies, and Maru clarified his current endeavor, asset management of large companies. The scene shifted back to the people after the shooting. Chul and his men analyzed the evidence of the shootout, assuming the use of Kim Yang's skills. But Chul noticed something different, but very important. He noticed that only the most vital points on the people had been hit, not Kim Yan's style. Maru was with them. Director Choi announced the deployment to Busan, causing a subordinate to be perplexed. He explained, Charlotte's collapse would force Maru to report to Busan sooner or later. A farewell warning was sounded about meeting Maru in Busan soon. The scene switched to the World Wide Web, their construction department. World Construction Vice President Ma Tae-woon was excited about the opportunity to taste Busan soup while on assignment. He ordered a quick trip to Busan, decapitated Shim Un-young, and dined on noodles. President Cha Jae-cheol of World Investment Security said that you can't allow yourself to be distracted by small things, and that Shim Un-young belongs to their division. They are the ones who will capture her. He confirmed that other world branches are also heading to Busan for the operation. It was that bastard who doesn't feel pain again. He was injecting himself with some stuff. A subordinate questioned the legality of using weapons on South Korean soil. The captain confirmed the chairwoman's direct order and demanded full combat readiness. The scene switched back in time to the firefighters who were extinguishing the apartment where Kim exploded. They gave the command to go in after extinguishing the fire, noting the abnormal frequency of incidents. But the fire was getting even hotter. There were two people inside, one already charcoal and the other Kim. He didn't like anything. Another explosion had caught up with him. He pulled out his phone, which was already melting in his hands. He called Choi and reported generally his entire situation. Director Choi ordered the employee to go to Busan urgently, despite the end of his shift. The guard bitterly cursed the canceled day off, dreaming of a well-deserved vacation. He seriously considered writing a letter of resignation after the incident.